Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Darius circled the spoon around the plate. For about 5 minutes, Anthony patiently watched his daughter. But even her strong nerves eventually gave way. "Daria, what fly bit you this morning?" The girl rolled her eyes theatrically. "Dad, there's no fly in our house that can stand it. They all die of boredom on the fly." Anthony carefully pushed the empty plate away. "Watch her tongue. It's out of control lately, and you sound like a street junkie. I don't like it." The man paced the long tables, casting meaningful glances at the 12-year-old provocateur, without so much as twitching an eyebrow. After waiting a few seconds, he said defiantly, "I love this crypt-like house. I'm also sick of this mess. How many times have I asked you to tell Kathy to cook something else?" The housekeeper stood mute beside her master. After the girl's words, she shuddered as if electrical wires had been connected to her. Anthony stood up abruptly. "Daria, as long as you live in this house, you will eat and drink what they give you. You're not old enough. You're not old enough to change things." "Understood." Daria looked at her father and muttered, "Understood." An oppressive silence hung over the dining room. The girl became defiantly apprehensive. She ate her porridge, but in her mind she was calculating how long it would take her father to travel the distance from one end, from the table to the other. The results of the mathematical calculations were disappointing, and Daria decided not to be angry anymore. Noticing that his daughter had relented, Anthony sat back down. "Kathy, you can pour the coffee." The housekeeper hurried to the kitchen and returned immediately with a tray. Also speechless, she placed a cup with a steaming beverage and a miniature creamer in front of him. "And coffee for me." Daria's voice sounded already indulgent. The man's pulse trembled, but he didn't fall for his daughter's ploy and said sternly, "Kathy will prepare the cocoa when you've had your porridge. Caffeine is bad for you at your age, and by the way, you should despise this porridge so much. Even the royal family traditionally serves this dish in the morning." Daria snorts at Dad. Anyone would think he had breakfast at Buckingham Palace. The man's heavy masculine fist lands on the natural oak tabletop. "Daria, what's with the language? I don't understand your intolerable behavior. Will you be punished today?" Anthony turned to the housekeeper. "Kathy, make sure this young lady doesn't run off anywhere." The housekeeper went back out of the country and looked at the master in a servile manner. "All right, I'm watching. Let's give her a good thrashing today. I think a strict regimen will do my daughter good. She's getting a bit temperamental." Anthony came out of the huge dining room, and soon his energetic footsteps echoed ominously throughout the house. Daria wanted to burst into tears, but struggled to hold back the tears. "What is it like for you to carry?" "Kathy," she bowed in a curtsy. Her whole appearance spoke of being ready to carry out any order, and this irritated the teenager more than anything else. The girl stood up and kicked a chair with her foot. "I don't want anything else. And stay out of my way. Leave me alone." Daria didn't hold back after all. Tears burst the dam of patience. She ran to the second floor to lock herself in her room. Executive Kathy tried to catch up with her. "Daria, wait. You know your father doesn't like to be contradicted, right? If I don't follow his instructions, he'll fire me." The girl stopped in front of her room and raised her hands, imitating the fanfare. She acted in triumph. "Then it will be the happiest day of my life. Kathy, you bore me to tears. How's the oatmeal? It's as bland as you are." The door slammed in Kathy's face, and soon the sounds of music came from the landlord's daughter's room. Kathy jiggled the doorknob and, faintly audibly, let out a small snake, just like her late mother. Kathy worked as a housekeeper at Anthony's house. For almost 10 years, her teaching career didn't take off right away. After graduating from college, she got a job in an elite gymnasium, where in her first month of work, the young teacher had a conflict with the students of the class. She was only 22 years old at the time, and the student, whose last name she could not remember, was only 16. The boy was insolent to the point of indignation, and he turned every lesson into an enthusiastic spectacle. Kathy tolerated the young bullies, hoping that they would soon tire of this kind of entertainment. But the boy could not calm down. One day he went to the extreme And when the teacher invited him to the blackboard, the boy gritted his teeth in her arms, saying, "Honey, let me give my lesson. I assure you, you'll love it." The class burst into hysterical laughter, and the young teacher burned with embarrassment. The defensive reaction worked spontaneously, and as soon as he freed himself from the embrace of the weeds, he gave her a resounding slap. The same day of the rematch, the principal invited Kathy into his office and immediately started yelling at her. "Kathy, what do you allow yourself? To use your fists in our gym? This is unacceptable. What was I supposed to do?" This young scumbag started using her hands in front of the entire class. The principal looked at the young teacher with contempt. "Do you expect me to believe you? Well, it doesn't matter anymore. We don't need that kind of staff. Do you even know who the father of the boy you beat up is?" Kathy shouted that I didn't hit him. I just slapped him. The principal frowned. "I don't think arguments are appropriate in this situation. File a complaint." Kathy had no choice, so she wrote a statement in her office. The graduate of a prestigious university, who was interning in the UK, hoped to get a job quickly. For 3 months, she went to schools, nurseries, and other institutions where her skills could be useful. But everywhere she was turned down. Desperate to find work, she made an appointment with the mayor. When the aide asked her why she was visiting the mayor, she lied. "I love our city very much, but it is not up to par with the regional centers in many respects." The mayor's aide didn't even hear the end of it, and he is right. "I would like more comfort and cleanliness." Kathy was pleased, but she noticed. "And that is easily accomplished by involving the youth." "That's a great idea. I think our mayor will appreciate your initiative. But the problem is that he's on vacation, so I'll refer you to the deputy mayor." But as soon as the visitor entered the official's office, her courage instantly vanished. The girl burst into tears. Anthony didn't understand what was wrong with her. "Calm down, and tell me, what was the problem you were trembling about?" stammered Kathy. "Please help me a little more, and I will simply starve to death because I have no means of subsistence." The deputy mayor shrugged her shoulders in confusion. "Young lady, don't talk nonsense. There are many vacancies in our city." "What are your studies, Kathy?" She took her documents out of her purse. The official opened the diploma, then the workbook, and smiled. "Yes, you have, to put it bluntly, an impressive record. Only 1 month. Tell me why you left the gym." "Kathy, did you tell this man everything in confidence?" Anthony wrote something in his diary and told her to come back the next day. Kathy showed up at the reception desk at the town hall at the appointed time, but Anthony told her not to. "Unfortunately, I still have nothing to tell you. The father of the pupil you had the incident with has blown the story wide open. That's why no school in the city wants to see such a troubled specialist." Kathy didn't take anything home. She was eager to leave this world as she saw no way out of the situation. But the girl did not have time to fulfill her plan, because just a couple of hours after her visit to the mayor's office, Anthony himself called her. "Kathy, considering your difficult situation, I can offer you a job as a governess for a while. My wife is seriously ill and we have a young daughter. Of course, it's not exactly a prestigious job, but at least you'll be able to earn a living." Kathy accepted immediately. At that time, her situation was really disastrous, and she forgot about her ambitions. My wife Adriana welcomed her warmly, although my husband and I had not planned to hire staff, but circumstances made us reconsider that decision. "We will soon be moving to a new house, so I need a responsible helper. I hope we can be friends." The landlady had a pleasant timbre to her voice, and that lowered Kathy's guard a bit. But when Adriana looked at the girl, she couldn't help but think how unpleasant his wife's gaze was. It was then that she thought for the first time that she was not likely to find common ground with that woman. Kathy's intuition did not fail. Adriana, during her husband's absence, most of the day the landlady was absent from work. She invented for the housekeeper the most sophisticated abuses. But Kathy tolerated everything because she had nowhere to go, since she had no relatives. A great aunt said to her after school, "Dear niece, I've been dragging you around. How long can you manage on your own now? I'm still a young woman, and I want to make my own life in these square meters." Do you realize that? It's impossible to realize. My aunt had a 1-bedroom apartment, and for several years Kathy lived in the kitchen. After graduating from college, the girl never visited her relative, although Aunt Miranda lived nearby. Once settled in the gymnasium, she immediately rented a room, hoping to settle down in her personal life. But these plans were not destined to come true. So working at Anthony's house eliminated a number of problems. And Kathy was very afraid of losing this place. For many years, she tolerated the nagging mistress and did not notice how she became a silent creature, ready to fulfill any whim of her mistress at the push of a button. Adriana, and she was clearly melting before his eyes, and her condition was deteriorating rapidly every day. She was suffering greatly, taking out her irritation on the housekeeper and her young daughter. So when the housekeeper went to the next world one nameless autumn day, Kathy breathed a sigh of relief. From then on, she felt more at home in her employer's house. But if Anthony was happy with this state of affairs, his reckless daughter was unwilling to accept these rules. And the older Doria got, the more difficult it became to accommodate the governess. Vanessa went to work as if it were a vacation, and she tried to show up early at her favorite school. The mayor's assistant's punctuality was legendary. It further enhanced the self-esteem of the woman, who was not distinguished by her outward attractiveness. Vanessa's main asset was her business qualities, and the mayor once jokingly confessed that without Vanessa he would be lost. She is my light in the dark realm of bureaucracy. These words were spoken to Anthony in a small circle of friends many years ago, but they became faithful for the young woman, to whom the male sex paid little or no attention. Every morning she would wake up and mentally repeat Nellie, hurry up, or the boss without you will be lost. At first, this phrase was taken with humor. Over the years, it became a motto. By repeating these words, Vanessa gained confidence in her exceptionality. She did not hesitate to point out her mistakes to the boss. She could suggest the right decision. Vanessa was never wrong in her forecasts, so the mayor often consulted her on various matters. Thus, imperceptibly for her and for others, Vanessa gained universal respect. She was never called a secretary, and proudly wore this honorable title of the mayor's assistant. Of course, like any ambitious person, Vanessa wanted more. And when Anthony was widowed, she began to nurture the dream of becoming his wife. Of course, the boss was unaware of his right-hand man's secret plans, but Vanessa, with her usual diligence, worked in that direction. She was almost certain that she would achieve her goal. The only stumbling block was the boss's daughter. The girl immediately disliked her father's assistant. This little beast could read the thoughts of others from a distance. Vanessa tried several times to befriend Doria, but all attempts ended in complete failure. Then the woman went on the sleigh and began to give the boss's daughter small gifts in the form of charms and cosmetics and other trinkets. Doria easily understood this maneuver. Vanessa, and in front of his father, told the aunt, if you want to buy me, you are trying in vain. It's a pile of junk. Don't waste it. Spend your modest salary. Although the girl's words hurt Vanessa's ego, she didn't even blink, but she threw the ball into the goal with her opponent. Doria, what comes from the heart cannot be measured with money. But unfortunately, young people like you have a somewhat distorted perception of reality and are oriented towards other values. Doria didn't quite know what she was talking about. She felt it was her duty to resist his influence. But suddenly Anthony supported his assistant. You're absolutely right, Vanessa. My daughter has been talking a lot of nonsense lately, and I often have to blush for her. So please don't be offended. Without realizing it, Doria had helped the woman who was struggling to take her mother's place. Vanessa sighed and shifted into the work groove. She was watering the flowers when Anthony burst into the reception area. Vanessa could tell by the boss's smoldering look that he was in a bad mood today. She instantly wiped the smile off her face and, in an emphasized official tone, told Anthony, "Today you have a conference call with your supervisors at 9:30, and at 11 you are to call the governor." Anthony let out a short one. "I know that, but thanks for reminding me." He strode confidently into the office, returning immediately to the reception desk. "Vanessa, if you don't mind, prepare a report on the work with large and low-income families, orphans, and other people in need of social support until tonight. But don't go into details, just generalities. Okay, Anthony, I'll do what I can. The mayor's eyes grew warm. Thank you, Vanessa. I don't know what I'd do without you. The woman's heart fluttered. Happiness after the chief's encouraging words and pleasant thoughts flowed back in a measured stream. I would do anything to make you happy. You have no idea what a woman in love can do. Anthony had long since forgotten about earthly affairs. Every day he had to deal with the important problems of the city. Therefore, that day he had no time to be distracted. The mayor's plans also went awry. When the governor called shortly after the conference call, "Listen, Anthony, are you planning to open a children's art center?" Anthony thought someone had already told him. But out loud, he cheerfully replied, "Yes, Stephen. But we haven't decided on a date yet. So you decide you're taking the cake. What's the reason for the delay? You know the objects of social importance we have in the first place." Stephen's displeasure was felt even from a distance. Anthony tried to say something, but the governor kept denouncing him for sloppiness, indifference, and other sins. "What are you doing in the governor's chair? Right, tidying up your city. And tidying up yours. This damn center was supposed to be finished in the spring, and it's already summer. What's the problem? The girls can't handle it, so whip them or give them a ruble. I don't care. Anyway, I'll give you exactly 1 week to fix the flaws. I hope you haven't forgotten that City Day is coming up." "I haven't forgotten, Stephen." "Well, that's good. The opening of the center is in preparation for the event. Invite the big-name guests, invite the sponsors. Not a bad idea to involve your family. It will be homey, warm, and touching. I promise I'll send a TV crew. And I'll probably be there myself." Stephen was famously tough, and Anthony knew perfectly well that his wish should be taken as an order. Inwardly, he muttered, "I don't have enough to worry about without this center. Now I will have to take personal control of this facility." The reconstruction of the old gymnasium had long been on the city's agenda. On several occasions, the old building was first to be converted into sewing workshops, so local businessmen had their eye on it. But 5 years ago, Anthony's predecessor said, "This is where the kids are going to be." That's right, because the building was built a century and a half ago with donations from the townspeople. And we must continue the tradition of our ancestors. And it will be symbolic. This idea of the former mayor had the support of the higher echelons. Even a fundraiser was organized for the reconstruction of the old gymnasium. But as often happens in our country actively started the case, it soon faded. After talking with the governor, Anthony called his assistant. "Vanessa, I have a personal request for you to work with our local businessman. It is urgent." Vanessa immediately realized that this was a hot case. "Why the rarity?" insisted Stephen. Anthony sighed heavily. "No, he didn't. It rolled over me like a rolling pin. But there's no way out. We have to follow orders. So, a week from today, we have the grand opening of the Children's Art Center. The governor wants everything to be top-notch. I can't wait to do it." The aide said with confidence that we will do it, Anthony. Is this the first time we've been interrupted? The mayor looked at the Vanessa woman with gratitude. "You are a true friend and comrade in arms." Second compliment. Just for one morning, Vanessa, after such a powerful impulse, was ready to roll mountains. She immediately pulled the secret list out of her desk drawer and began calling potential sponsors for the upcoming event. The mayor admired his assistant for a few more minutes. For the first time in his head, a brief flash and blinked a thought. With such an enterprising woman, no difficulties are not terrible. But this thought quickly fled. It has not settled in the man's memory. Anthony returned home late. Although he was very tired after a hard day's work, but his mood was on the rise. He had time to visit the place that had so interested the governor. Contrary to expectations, the work there was quite active, and when the mayor told the foreman that it was necessary to finish the work in just 1 week, the foreman replied cheerfully, "Don't worry, we'll manage." As usual, the owner was greeted at the entrance by Kathy. Anthony cast a fleeting glance and thought of 2 women about the same age and so different. Vanessa is confident to the point of insolence, and this one looks like a marketable fish. She's afraid to say a word. The man looked back at the housekeeper. "Kathy, go get Daria. I'll be in my office." The daughter was not long in arriving. She breezed into her father's office. Dad, Daria's belly called to me as her careless, smiling expression was a challenge to everything around her. But Anthony decided to ignore his daughter's antics. Gently, even with homely warmth, he asked Daria what she was willing to do for her friend. The girl clearly wasn't expecting such a question. Dad, you're doing fine. The man smiled. Do I look like an abnormal person? No, you don't, but you ask very strange questions about friendship. Daria sat on the back of the chair and hugged her father. Dad, you won't believe this, but I don't have any friends I can go to the fire and water with. At school, everyone acts like I'm the mayor's daughter. Even the teachers get angry in front of me. Honestly, I'm sick of it all. I wish I had a sister or a brother. Anthony hadn't expected such a frank confession. He kissed his daughter gently on the forehead. You and I are more or less in the same situation. In front of me, many subordinates also ingratiate themselves. It's true that not all of them are very self-confident people, ready at any moment to come to the rescue. They are the kind of people I usually trust. Daria smiled. You, Vanessa. That aunt has other plans for you. I've seen her eye on you. I'm sure she wants to marry you. Daria, if you keep knocking your teeth out like that, you'll soon have to get dentures. And it's a little early for you to be talking about grown-up things. The girl sighed in relief, and the father continued, okay, a little joke. Let's get down to business. The Children's Center is opening in a week, and I want you to help me. Daria glared at her father in surprise. What do I have to do? It's nothing complicated. You have to give a touching little speech. You're a smart girl, and I'm sure you can do it. You'll talk about family, friends, and helping each other. I think it's a personal mission from the governor for you. He even promised to send television crews. Daria paced around the office. And what did he prod his father with? Our people will die of envy. When they put me on TV, I'll do it. I just need the right outfit. The what? Anthony looked at his daughter in surprise, but after a second he slapped his forehead with the palm of his hand. I get it. You mean a suit? Well, yes, you could wear a classic dress. You know, something austere so everyone would think she was a good girl and a model student. Anthony didn't think his 12-year-old daughter could reason like an adult. Daria, you put everything in place. Now all that's left is to prepare for the event. Dad, why do I have to rack my brains? I'll tell Kathy. She'll help me with the speech. Or would you rather tell her? Daria smiled and disappeared out the door. Anthony thought wistfully how quickly his daughter had grown up. A very independent girl making her own important decisions. When his daughter left, the man invited Kathy in. He briefly explained what was required of her. The young girl felt embarrassed because it was the first time in 10 years that she received such unusual tasks from her master. Anthony, I don't even know what to say. I don't want to let you down, but I'm afraid I can't do it. I've forgotten everything I learned at the university. Anthony got angry. Is it so hard to find a suitable dress for a girl and write 2-3 sentences? Why do you always doubt everything? You need to be a little more confident, and sometimes it's good to take the initiative. Kathy nodded her head a couple of times, and the shadow slipped out of the study into her room, where she was crying from overwhelming anguish. Despair. The master is right about everything. I am like an amoeba. I do not live, but I exist. I can't go on living like this. Such impulses often occurred in Kathy Leonidovna's modest life, but she ruthlessly extinguished them because she was too afraid to change anything in her life. After all, it is much more comfortable to go with the flow than to resist it. Another city day went by in style. Residents were amazed by the magnitude of the party. In a small provincial town, several themed areas were deployed where children and adults could have a great time relaxing. For example, in the park a dance floor was organized for the older ones, where couples danced to the sound of a brass band. The younger ones had fun on the rides, and music lovers enjoyed the work of visiting artists. But the real highlight of the program was the long-awaited inauguration of the Children's Art Center. The governor himself came to town to say a few words. My friends, dear compatriots, you know that every talent has its origin in the homeland. And I am sure that the opening of the center will reveal new talents in the future. We do not yet know their names, but they will undoubtedly glorify this land. That is why I hand over the symbolic key of the new center to the representative of the young generation of our beautiful city." The square erupted in applause, and Daria proudly took the stage. Cameras clicked from all sides, but she only looked towards the place where the cameraman of the regional television studio was working. The girl gracefully raised beautiful foam keys on her outstretched arms, and without hesitation, delivered her speech. "I am glad to have had the honor of inaugurating the Magic House. They say that each person from birth receives a gift, and for this gift to become a real talent, it takes a lot of work. Therefore, a master jeweler strikes a diamond, and experienced masters light up in the sky small stars of talent. And that these stars in our city will be more." Sounded solemn fanfare and decorated with balloons. The huge doors of the renovated building opened, causing great delight among the audience. Daria handed the keys to the director of the Cultural Center and finished her colorful speech. "They also say that all children's dreams come true someday, and I would like to wish all children on behalf of myself and the city authorities. Don't be afraid to dream." The audience applauded Daria, and this was her moment of glory. As soon as she stepped off the stage, she was immediately surrounded by her peers and acquaintances. "Daria, you're great. I'm so happy for you. You made a great speech. When are you going to be on TV?" It was an obligatory question, and the girl answered confused. "I don't know, they didn't tell me anything." She wanted to ask Kathy, who was by her side during the whole ceremony, but the governess disappeared somewhere. On the stage, the action continued, and according to the script, the godparents were now presenting gifts to the newly inaugurated center. They also spoke words of farewell, and the audience applauded actively. Suddenly, Daria felt dizzy and began to push her way through the crowd. She thought with annoyance, "Kathy, you stupid chicken. How could she abandon me? It's okay, I won't complain about her to Daddy, and he'll give her a good life with pictures." The girl went to the central square of the town. There too, lively music was playing and people were strolling leisurely through the shopping streets. Nearby, Daria heard a familiar voice. She turned around and was almost stunned by the surprise. Kathy was walking next to the governor and chatting sweetly with an unknown man. The girl wanted to tell the housekeeper everything she was thinking, but he was looking at her so expressively that she forgot all the words. But the most surprising thing was that Kathy spoke to the strange man in German. And she did it with such ease and fluency, as if she had not been born in this city, but somewhere not far from Berlin. They walked past, confused. Daria's mood disappeared immediately. Everyone around her was amused, but she wanted to cry with resentment. She muttered to herself in despair. "Dad is somewhere entertaining guests. He's a mummy. Kathy has found her own amusement too. I wonder who the guy is with whom she was having such a pleasant conversation." The girl didn't get the answer to that question until late in the evening, after she had taken offense at everyone. Daria returned home and locked herself in her room. She was already imagining how the housekeeper and then Dad would come back and urge her to sit at the table. But soon Kathy came back and immediately started pacing around the kitchen with the dishes. After a while, her father pulled up to the house in his SUV, but drove past his daughter's room and didn't even drop the usual on the way. "Daria, how are you?" Such an ignorant attitude towards her person. People close to her surprised and angered her at the same time. Therefore, Daria reluctantly left her shelter. Daria wanted to share her worries with her father and save up for a housekeeper. She was about to knock on the door of her father's study, but he came out. Seeing the daughter, Antonio said to Daria, "Did you do a good job?" "Very good. Thank you for not letting me down. But we'll talk about nice things later. Right now, I need to start a little secret with Kathy." "With whom? With whom?" The girl didn't immediately realize that Kathy was her housekeeper. She was unpleasantly surprised by her father's decision. And at first, she wanted to lock herself back in her room to suffer alone with resentment. But then she changed her mind and tiptoed into the kitchen. Daria knew it was wrong to eavesdrop, so she mentally reassured herself. It's okay to do it once in a while, when it's in the best interest of the common cause. Her intuition told her that her father was discussing something very important with the housekeeper. and because she was so curious, she decided to ignore the rules of decorum. The conversation must have been in full swing, for Anthony's voice was trembling with excitement. "Kathy, of course I realize you have your own life. And frankly, I'm happy for you, but it's all so sudden. It's like you've abandoned me, left me to my own devices. You're overreacting, Anthony. I don't have much to do in this house. And Doria's a big girl. She can manage on her own with a light breakfast. I'm sure you'll have no problem finding an assistant. It's just a click away. Ask your secretary. She won't refuse you such a small favor, will she?" Daria didn't have time to digest the information she had received before she heard her father's footsteps approaching. She hurried to hide in the alcove between the kitchen and the bathroom. As a child, this secret corner had been her safe haven, where she could sit for hours. Her heart was beating frantically, and she feared that the noise would attract her father. Contradictory feelings raged in her soul. On the one hand, he was glad that the pale moth was finally leaving his home. But on the other hand, the prospect of having to do everything herself did not bode well. Stubborn child. Resentment at the governess's behavior took hold of her. And the girl, after waiting for her father to close up in his study, walked confidently toward the kitchen. Kathy stopped at the stove. Without turning around, she said dinner wasn't ready yet. "Be patient, Daria, for about 5 minutes." "I don't want to be patient. Tell me, Kathy, how could you betray Dad and me? Did that guy cheat on you?" The housekeeper laughed. "Doria, were you eavesdropping? I didn't expect you to go down like that. And what guy are you talking about?" "The one you were traveling with in German. I thought he only spoke English. Turns out you can do it in German, French, Italian. I can also clap in your slang." Kathy approached the girl, wanting to hug her pupil, but Daria pulled away from her embrace. Then the woman leaned against the wall, and in a tired voice said to Daria, "There comes a time in everyone's life when they want to change everything. It happened to me today too. It's fate. I didn't even think that everything would change in a day. When you and I were going to the city party, but it turned out that suddenly the guest interpreter, who came from Germany, disappeared. Did you see him with the governor? He's the same one you didn't like for some reason." Daria didn't know what to say and sang reluctantly. Kathy laughed again. "By the way, he is a well-known businessman, head of a large company. He wants to open a production plant in the regional center." Daria interrupted the housekeeper impatiently. "Then let him open it. What's it got to do with you? This man has offered me a job I've never dreamed of." The girl had recovered from the shocking news. She commented with derision, "I see. And you, Kathy, you fell for that German's divorce. He'll leave you at the first opportunity." "Daria, why do you choose the worst options? I can't spend my life serving you. I have to think of myself." Daria had no valid arguments left and left the kitchen with demonstrative disdain, letting dinner continue without me. I'd had enough tonight to pass the time somehow. Daria turned on the laptop recently given to her by her father. Until midnight, she had been chatting with her friends on social media. Someone had already uploaded a video of her performance at the Art Center opening. He read the positive comments and his heart filled with a pleasant book. In her head, she thought, "I am a star. Now everyone will know me. And that stupid Kathy can get the hell out of here. Daddy will find a new worker." In the morning, when Daria woke up, the house was very quiet. The girl felt terribly hungry and regretted having refused to eat dinner the night before. She said aloud, "Kathy, I'm awake now. We have something to eat." But no one answered the call. Daria walked into the kitchen and saw a note on the table. "Daria, breakfast is in the kitchen. I made this today. I hope you like it better than oatmeal. Have a good appetite. If it's hard, call me." At the bottom, a cell phone number was written in even handwriting. This time, the attack of resentment was so strong that Daria felt a physical pain in the heart area. And in the act, she began to scream, "I hate everyone I hate." Daria felt the attack of resentment again and did not notice the tears rolling down her eyes in two thin knobs. She roared and thought bitterly that if her mother were there now, she would not let them hurt her only daughter. Little did she know that at that very moment she was only in another city. A completely different girl was also roaring in despair. and the reason for the tears, it was a colorful performance. Admittedly, she did not know the name of her doppelganger. The star video, uploaded to the network, in a few hours slipped among the leaders of views. That's why Maria's phone was bursting with calls from her colleagues. But the girl had to listen to mostly unflattering criticism. Maria, and we did not know that in our class, there is a girl with a double ass and quietly you have skillfully passed off as a gray mouse. And you yourself are a star. What kind of speeches can you make? Maria didn't have a laptop or tablet because she and her mother lived very modestly, so she didn't get a chance to watch the video that caused such a stir. But after a string of calls from her classmates, her teacher Kelly called her and asked her sternly, "Maria, tell me, please, why am I the last person to hear about your adventures? It seems to me that you should have informed me and the principal before participating in such activities." Maria tried to explain to the teacher that there had been some mistake and that she had never been to that town in her life. But Kelly yelled at her not to be naive. In the age of technological advances, all things secret quickly come to light. Tomorrow I expect to see you and your mother in the principal's office. You will explain yourselves there. Nina wasn't kidding when, on her way home from work, she caught her daughter Maria crying. "Who hurt you? You know you mustn't get upset." Maria's mother did not fear for her daughter's health in vain. The girl had been ill since she was very young. At the age of 5, she was diagnosed with a heart defect. The doctors said that the pathology was congenital and that there was a good chance that the defect would heal over time. But a positive prognosis is possible only if Mary will eat right and stay away from colds. The list of prohibitions was spinning and negative emotions. Therefore, Nina strictly followed the daily regime of his daughter. She did not allow her to watch horror movies. She also carefully selected from the literature to read. The woman began to scrutinize her daughter's room, trying to guess what exactly it was that made Mary cry. But the girl had already come to her senses a little. "Mom, I haven't watched bad movies or read detectives. I'm just sick of the phone calls. Everyone calls and talks about some video on the internet." Maria tried to tell Mom what had happened. But Nina didn't understand any of her daughter Maria's authoritative narration. "What video? I know more or less where this town is, but I have nothing to do with this settlement." "You calm down. Now let's go to the neighbor's house. They have a computer and together we'll watch that damn video that has caused such a stir." The neighbor did not deny him a small servant and even offered to help him. He quickly found the necessary material. Here is the film about the Children's Center. The three watched the 2-minute clip recorded with a cell phone and fell silent. Nina didn't want to believe what she was seeing. No, it couldn't be. Molly said to Nina, "There are other things in the world. You may have heard that somewhere. I think in Brazil there is a town where only twins live." The neighbor wanted to add more intrigue, but Nina cut her off abruptly. "Molly, what does Brazil have to do with twins? Don't be ridiculous. I don't want my daughter to hit her head. That girl looks a lot like her. But at first glance, it's not Maria. Just a slight resemblance, that's all." The neighbor moved her lips resentfully and turned off the computer. "Yeah, I don't really care. I'm not going to get involved in other people's problems. I have enough of my own." All afternoon, Nina tried to distract her daughter from the fun at home, but the image of the girl in the video gave her no peace. And an inner voice kept telling Nina, "You have to find out. It's not just a coincidence, and you know it. You're just afraid that suddenly new circumstances will open up and change everything in your life again." The medical profession says that everyone has phobias. It's just that some people have them hidden. That is, they do not manifest themselves in any way. And in others, these fears run. They express themselves in form. And they greatly complicate a person's life. Thread was haunted by panic attacks since childhood. He lost his mother very early on. And then she passed away suddenly. His father was hit by a truck in broad daylight. Dad was returning from fishing on his bicycle and respected all the rules. But the tragedy could not be avoided. The news that Alex had been hit by a car spread instantly throughout the village. 9-year-old Nina rushed to the scene of the accident, gasping for breath and her heart overflowing with anxiety. But what she saw gave her a real shock. The little girl ran to her father and started screaming in terror, "Dad, please don't die. I'll be lost without you. I'll do anything for you, but don't die." My father was still alive and even tried to smile. "It's nothing, but we've been in more trouble than this. We'll get out of it." The ambulance arrived and the paramedics began emergency treatment. The strict paramedic shouted to the women in the village, "What are you standing there for? Somebody take the girl away. She doesn't need to see this." Someone's strong arms lifted Nina up and carried her away. She was hysterical. "Let me go to my father. He'll die without me." But a familiar voice tried to calm her. "Nina, don't yell at Dad. It won't do any good. They'll take him to the hospital and treat him there. In the meantime, you'll stay with us." That voice belonged to a friend of Max's father. She didn't want to believe the man, so she calmed down. But all night long, she kept screaming. She had nightmares about her father. She wanted to save him from horrible creatures with fiery heads, but each time it started all over again. In the morning, she had a fever, and Uncle Max's wife nursed her for a week. The girl was sick, and when she felt a little better, she learned that her dad had died. The same afternoon after the terrible accident, Max took her to the cemetery and showed her her father's grave. The next day, a relative of her mother's, whom she had seen for the first time in her life, came to pick her up, and he took her with him. They took a long train ride, and Uncle Peter told her funny stories all the way. It was a proven way for the mother's stepbrother to distract his niece from bad thoughts. "Nina, don't be afraid. You'll forget all the bad stuff in the new place. By the way, do you have a little sister? Her name is Christina. She's my daughter. She's about 3 years older than you, but I'm sure you'll become friends." Uncle Peter and his wife tried to surround her with love and care. They partly succeeded, and the child gradually came to her senses. A wonderful relationship has developed with Christina, the couple's daughter. But the past did not want to let Nina go, and it came to her in her dreams, even during the day when the girl was alone. A year passed, then another. But these terrible dreams were repeated with surprising regularity. So Peter's uncle decided to take his niece to a specialist. The child psychologist talked with her for quite a while and then asked her to draw some pictures on a certain topic. Nina did not hear what Uncle Peter's doctor said after this test, but he prescribed her the beautiful pills, which she was to take twice a day. It is true that after this medicine, Nina became inhibited and scattered. Uncle Peter wanted to show her to the doctor again, but with a different profile. But then his wife, Aunt Sophia, came to the defense of the unfortunate. "Stop abusing children. You don't need those pills. You should show it to Grandma, and she'll take them all away. Uncle Peter, don't you like that idea?" "Sophia, I didn't realize you were such a dunce. Only certified medical professionals can be entrusted with your health." The woman didn't give up. Doctors are often impotent. Therefore, do not neglect the proven folk methods. I myself, as a child from a fright grandmother, treated me, and Nina will help. I was given the address of a woman. They say that she cures from all sorts of scares. Sophia, that's nonsense. Even the most experienced doctor can't cure all diseases. That's why people turn to witch doctors when doctors refuse to treat hopeless patients. Uncle Peter didn't bother to argue with his wife and waved his hand for her to do whatever she wanted. But remember that you will be personally responsible for the consequences. Aunt Sophia was pleased with her victory and whispered to Nina, "On Saturday you and I will go to see a grandmother who will take away your fears. Don't be afraid of anything or anything. Listen to your uncle. He's big, but he's afraid of everything." Nina remembers very well a visit to an old woman who lived in a little village near the forest. The old woman whispered something to her for a long time. Then she sprinkled Nina with the water stipulated by the aunt. She said that the girl was very frightened. "We must bring her twice more." Aunt Sophia promised, "All right, we will try to come." But already after the first session, Nina felt better. She no longer had scary dreams and was not afraid to be alone in the room. Aunt Sophia watched her niece for a while, and then confidently said, "My friend, we're not going anywhere with you. Stop torturing yourself, you have suffered enough. Live, my daughter, and be happy." Nina tried hard to follow her aunt's advice. She studied diligently at school and then enrolled in a hairdressing course. Her older sister had already graduated in medicine and was very surprised at Nina's choice. She could have found a more respectable profession. With your diploma, you could have studied law or pedagogy, and you went into hairdressing. Nina gave a succinct answer. I always wanted to beautify people. Actually, the reason for this choice was that she was in a hurry to become independent as soon as possible. Her aunt and uncle had done a lot for her. They had replaced her parents. But time was passing, and they were dressing up a lot, getting older. They both developed health problems, and Nina no longer wanted to be a burden to them. After finishing college, she got a job in a beauty salon, and a good salary allowed her to rent a room. But every weekend, the girl visited her relatives. The connection with them was not broken. And after Nina married Martin and permanently moved to another city. With her husband, the threads too. A very lucky one. Despite the fact that he was older than her by a total of 15 years. Martin was engaged in road transport, and the family was never short of money. Savlieva bought a 2-room apartment on the secondary market and began to dream of having a child. But there were years with the continuation of labor. The case has not moved from a standstill. Spouses began to go to doctors' offices, but after a thorough examination heard the final verdict. Doctors are very sorry, but you cannot have children together. Nina. After the doctor's words, I experienced exactly the same shock as when I looked at my dying father in my childhood. This time her hope was dying, and she would not accept it and decided to argue with the doctor. Doctor, if we have understood you correctly, do you think my husband and I are hopeless? The doctor coughed for emphasis. Exactly. But there are methods that allow people to become parents. You are right, there are such innovative methods, but in your case, their application is impossible due to the infertility of your spouse. Usually in such situations, donor material is recommended, but very rarely do our clinics accept this option. So what should we do? The doctor was silent for a long time and then said in a tired voice, I really want to help you. Believe me, I am speaking sincerely from the bottom of my heart. But the only thing I can advise you to do is to take the baby into foster care. Martin asked quietly, So you are advising us to adopt a baby? That's exactly the best way to foster a newborn. Believe me, in that case, the baby will become a real member of the family. Martin looked at his wife fondly. I think the doctor is right. If we make even one little person happy, life won't be a waste. I think so. Nina did not immediately accept her husband's decision. She hesitated for a few months, but then decided to consult her older sister. After all, Christina worked in this field and could not only give useful advice, but also render substantial help. In order to meet her sister, Nina even took a leave of absence from work and went to the city where she had spent the most beautiful years of her life. Christina met her sister at the train station and cheerfully informed her that you had arrived very successfully. I mean our conversation with you. Nina did not want her plans to become public. She whispered to her sister Christina, It seems to me that the train station is not exactly a suitable place to discuss such matters. The relative waved her hand. Believe me, no one here cares about you. Even if you talk out loud about something out of the ordinary, no one will turn around. I started this conversation because we have to hurry. We have a 2-month-old baby. She's a little thin, but she's active. She was brought to us the other day, and there's already a queue of people wanting to adopt her. Nina felt an inexplicable fluttering in her chest. Christina, what do we do? We have to act. The first thing is to meet the baby. What if you don't like each other? Christina was joking, though. Nina felt a strong excitement again. This happens to people when they jump into the water or fly around the planet. But the young girl's fears were in vain, because the abandoned baby smiled and started walking at the sight of her. Nina hesitantly asked her sister Christina, Can I hold her for a while? Of course you can. Those few minutes the woman remembered for the rest of her life. She barely held the little body in her arms. She felt an incredible surge of energy. Her heart was overflowing with a love of universal proportions. The little girl smiled at him again and said something to him in his incomprehensible language. Suddenly, she kissed the girl on the forehead. I will not give you to anyone. From today, we will always be together with you. But it's one thing to say it and another to do it. The adoption proceedings were delayed. The bureaucrats in the army of civil servants kept finding fault or demanding new certificates. As a result, the couple had to settle for a month in Christina's small apartment. But the older sister assured that her family was used to the cramped conditions. We spent 5 years in a 10-meter room in the dormitory, so we have not yet had time to get used to this house. Thanks to her sister's help, the adoption was arranged in a relatively short time. The 3 of them returned home, and Nina was thinking the whole way, it must be fate. Martin and I are fabulously lucky that Christina works. If it weren't for her, there's no telling how long we would have been looking for our baby. And now we have a baby girl, a woman who has suffered so much. I fanatically believed that with Mary's appearance in the family for all eternity, peace and happiness would reign. But these hopes were not fulfilled because Martin could not accept someone else's child. During the first year, he tried hard to be a father to Mary. But Nina saw that her husband did not do it because of the call of his heart. When the adopted daughter grew up and began to explore the world around her, the man became irritable. She stopped smiling and returned home as her daughter slept. Nina realized that something had to be done urgently to save the family. One day she said firmly to Martin, "We have to have a serious talk because we can't go on like this." The man immediately sank onto the couch. He wrapped his arms around his head in a kind of terrifying doom and said, "Nina, I'm sorry, but I haven't calculated my strength. I've tried, but I can't accept this child. As soon as I approach her, a hammer starts pounding on my temples. That girl is a stranger to you." Nina expected anything but this confession, but with numb lips she whispered to Martin, "What do we do now?" The man got up from the couch and started kissing her hands. "Nina, let's take the girl back to the place we took her from, okay? She's still little, she won't remember anything. She will still have a chance to have a family." The woman interrupted her husband's optimistic speech. "Martin, you make it sound like you and I borrowed a dog. You've had enough of it, and now you want to give it away to someone you know. That's no way to treat a dog, you know?" Nina didn't realize she was yelling. Her husband tried to calm her down. "Let's not get nervous now. It's a very complicated matter that can't be solved all at once. Martin, I've made a decision. I'm not going to tell on Maria." The man realized that he could not change his wife's mind and threw out with irritation, "Then I will have to leave this house." In the morning, Martin gathered his things and without a word to his wife disappeared forever from his life. The former spouses met 2 years later at the courthouse. At the divorce trial, the man with undisguised arrogance looked at Nina, and the fate of a single mother did not go in her favor. She does not look very good. Nina did not want to get into an argument with Martin, but did not miss the opportunity to poke him. "But you're divorced like a hog, and it's not a good life." Martin blushed 0. "You're not. You'd better thank me for leaving your floor. You might say I did it for free." Such insolence infuriated the woman to the depths of her soul, because she was still paying off the loan, which she herself foolishly contracted when she and her husband bought the apartment. She reminded the man of this, and he was immediately taken out of the mood, giving the woman the right. The court hearing lasted a little over an hour, and the spouses divorced by mutual consent. Nina fully assumed the responsibilities of raising an adopted daughter, and Martin voluntarily refused to fulfill his parental duties. Several years passed, and Nina learned that her ex-husband had remarried. Ironically, her new chosen one had 2 children from his first marriage. Only once did they meet by chance in a shopping mall. Martin was not ashamed and rushed to separate from his ex-wife as soon as possible. An apology is expected. The woman asked Martin, "Admit it, are you happy?" Martin shrugged his shoulders, unsure. "I don't know. I guess I'm happy." Nina took a long look at the man and thought bitterly that everyone had a different idea of happiness. Being in a cell-like capsule was very unpleasant. Nina waited impatiently for the young nurse to release her from the confined space. The machine whirred above the old woman's head, and the monotonous voice made her feel quite uncomfortable, even though she had been warned not to move or speak. She did not control herself. "Girl, how much longer is this going to go on?" The nurse cheerfully told her that her torment was over. "Now can you get up with the girl's help?" Nina got up and began to dress. The nurse wrote something on her card and at the same time shared her observations. "I have been working here for 3 years and I never cease to be amazed. Smart people have invented this wonderful device, which allows to detect any disease at the earliest stage. The patients are still dissatisfied. Is it so hard to be patient for a few minutes?" Nina realized that the question was addressed to her. It's not difficult, of course, but it's very unpleasant to lie there and hear something buzzing above you. It sounds as if a needle is about to come out of nowhere and drink into your brain. The girl laughed. "You have a great imagination." A surprising trait for such a mature age. The patient smiled. "Thank you for sparing my life. But it seems to me, colleague, that tact is not always appropriate in a medical institution." The girl wondered, "Are you also a medical professional?" Nina replied with undisguised pleasure, "And I have devoted 45 years to medicine." These hands have claimed more than 100 new lives. To convince the woman showed the nurse. Her friendly hands, the girl looked respectfully. "The results of your examination will be ready in about 15 minutes. I will take them to your doctor myself." Nina thanked the nurse and went to the office, where her fate would soon be decided. She sat comfortably on a free couch and waited her turn. Nina had lived almost 7 decades and rarely complained about her health. In her younger years, she was a serious skier and was even a regional champion. With age, her hobbies changed a bit, but physical activity was always the basis of her lifestyle. Her coworkers often joke that our Nina has a jet engine in one place. With that activity, she will work until she is 100 years old. Matron herself was not swinging on those terms, and she also said it jokingly to her daughters. "I doubt until I'm 100, but I will work until they take me off the ward." When it came time to draw up the pension, Nina boldly declared, "I'll work alone for a while longer. It's boring to be between 4 walls." Everyone knew that the woman had no one but her niece. The clinic's management met her needs and extended her contract, and Nina continued to share her invaluable experience with the young addition. But she had barely passed her 7th decade, and her health was failing badly. Weakness, severe dizziness, loss of appetite appeared. For some time, the woman attributed these symptoms to age-related changes in the organism. But then he began to lose weight, and this alarming sign could not be ignored. Her strength was fading day by day, and she had to take a well-deserved vacation to distract herself from her sad thoughts. At first, Nina took to reading books and then sought the friendship of the women in the neighborhood. She believed that positive emotions would help her to improve her health, but to no avail, and the weight continued its rapid decline. There came a time when she fainted in the store. It was then that the woman decided to take serious care of her health. She had already undergone many tests, but the doctors could not determine the cause of her ailment. This question kept her awake at night. She tossed and turned sleeplessly, repeating, "Lord, why am I being punished? Wherein have I sinned before you?" Memory held different versions of transgressions, but all were insignificant except one. Nina tried to banish the unpleasant memories, but they began to disturb her consciousness more and more often. To rid herself of this pleasure, she decided to consult an expert woman. Wendy was a very devout woman who always attended Sunday and holiday services at the local church. After listening to Nina, Dove told her, "You have to take communion. Tell your sins to the bishop, cleanse your soul, and believe me, you will feel better right away." The neighbor spoke so convincingly that she believed her and went along with her to the service on Sunday. But at the most crucial moment, when she had to tell the priest about her criminal act, which she had committed 12 years ago, the woman screamed. She still remembers the priest's piercing look and his words, "Repent, sister, and you will feel better." But instead of repenting, Nina murmured in confusion, "I'm sorry, I can't." "Maybe another time, Wendy, but maybe another time," she said. "Maybe another time, Wendy," but then she rebuked her. "You shouldn't be like that, Nana. Our sins keep us from living. They weigh heavily on our hearts." Nina timidly objected, "Because there are different kinds of sins, and maybe my offense is not as serious as it seems. I did it for pure motives. Tell me, what is your sin?" The woman was about to open her soul to her neighbor, but she noticed curiosity in his eyes. And she thought that if she did not trust the father, then this Wendy should not open her secret. It will spread throughout the neighborhood than me. Nina was even mentally afraid to call herself a criminal. She again withdrew into herself, trying to find other ways to escape from her obsessive thoughts. The office door opened and the nurse called her name. The standing woman walked over to the desk where the caped doctor sat. The doctor didn't even look at the elderly patient and nodded to her. "Sit down." The woman sat down and watched the doctor, who was writing something in illegible handwriting. 5 minutes passed. Finally, the doctor put aside the previous patient's chart and began to read the results of Nina's examination. As he studied the conclusion, his face became increasingly grim. He looked at the patient and immediately looked away. "Unfortunately, Nina, I have nothing to please you. To be frank, the situation is very bad." The old woman felt a tremor throughout her body. "I have cancer." The doctor kept silent and looked away from the window. The patient had to repeat the same question. "Doctor, I have cancer." "You are too late. It's advanced. It has metastasized." "Given your age, doctor, I understand. I've also worked in medicine for almost half a century. Can you tell me how much time I have left?" "Unfortunately, that's a question no one can answer, and I don't advise you to prepare for an imminent end. With proper treatment, you can slow down the process. And will you still have a few years left to enjoy your loved ones?" "I have no one." "Thank you, doctor, for your frank answer. I will consider whether I should receive treatment." The doctor was surprised at the woman. What kind of reflection can there be in a situation where even one day is important? "I am writing you a referral for urgent hospitalization." "Doctor, can I come back tomorrow? I have some business to take care of." The doctor disagreed. "Okay, I'll let you go until tomorrow." "I'll let you go until tomorrow." Nina couldn't remember how she had gotten to her apartment. She wanted to cry so badly, but there were no tears. She sat on the couch prostrate until evening. Then she reached for her cell phone. Her usual friends had forgotten about her. She hadn't even called anyone, so the phone lay orphaned, waiting for its owner to remember it. In her dresser drawer, the woman frantically searched for her niece's number, as long as she didn't change it. Luckily, after the first beep, the phone rang with a familiar voice. "Aunt Miranda, is something wrong?" Nina felt tears rolling down her cheeks with two hands. "My grandfather has diagnosed me with a serious illness. It is heaven's punishment for a grave sin. Aunt Miranda, don't despair. I will come to see you tomorrow. Kathy, I won't be home. I'm going to be hospitalized. But it doesn't matter. I'll come tomorrow. And please don't fill your head with nonsense." Kathy kept her word. And the next day, she showed up at her relative's room at lunchtime. She brought with her 2 bags of fruit, Juice's kissed aunt, and cheerfully said, "Here is a supply of vitamins, so that all this will be destroyed in 2 days." Nina looked at her niece hopefully. "Will you come to see me again?" "Of course I will. How could I leave you alone?" "Kathy, my dear, why are you showing me so much favor?" "Because last time I treated you so badly." Nina burst into tears. Kathy stroked her gray head and soothed her like a child. "Don't cry. I don't hold a grudge. And it's been so many years. Why remember the past?" objected the aunt. "How can you not remember it if it doesn't give you peace?" "These memories upset me. I never believed in magic and other nonsense, and now I believe it. My illness is a punishment for a terrible sin I committed when I had a sound mind and a strong memory." Kathy was worried about her aunt's condition, but she couldn't wait to tell her biggest secret, and the niece had to give in to her aunt. But as the woman told her terrible secret, terror gripped her. "Kathy, please don't interrupt me. You're the only one I can trust. Maybe you can correct my mistake, Aunt. I'll try if it's in my power." Nina covered her eyes and began her confession. "It happened 12 years ago, if we don't count another 2 months and a few days. My shift was coming to an end when my shift partner called to tell me she was having problems with her family. She asked me to fill in for her, promising that I would work the substitute shift afterward. I agreed. There were only 7 laboring women in the room and one 18-year-old bimbo who kept saying she didn't want to have a baby. She ran out of the room several times and asked me to give her a pen and paper. She wanted to write a cancellation, but I explained the rules and she seemed to calm down. I had a cup of tea and pulled myself together. Then I got a call from the emergency room. They had brought in a woman with kinks. Well, it's not the first time. And of course I didn't hesitate. I thought I could handle it myself. The baby was born very weak. She took a chance and died. Mom is hysterical, says she's had IVF 3 times. The first 2 times she had miscarriages, so the 3rd pregnancy she was in labor. She took a couple of days off to go home. It was my husband's anniversary, and then she went into labor. I did everything I could to calm the unfortunate one down, advised her to try again. But she said it was the last attempt because she was at the limit of her age. Nina kept quiet, and Kathy thought she had fallen asleep. But the woman wrinkled her nose painfully and asked for water. She quenched her thirst and continued. While calming that mother, the girl who was going to write the cancellation went into labor, and that's when I made a fatal mistake. I again relied on my experience and did not call the on-call doctor. Although what could help the district therapist in that difficult situation? The delivery was quick, and it turned out that the baby girl walked with a double. The first child came into the world safe and sound, immediately screaming. With the second baby, I had to struggle while taking care of her. My young parturient started to bleed. The situation was critical, but my brain was working like a computer. The first woman was still in the delivery room, and I suggested she take the baby from the twin. There was no time to think about it, because the resuscitation team had to be called urgently. The woman understood the complexity of the situation and agreed immediately. She even promised to thank me generously. Then Nina paused again. Kathy said, Tia, you are very tired. You need to rest. Don't worry. I'll sit here, and then you can tell me what happened. The woman gave them a big smile. What happened next was nothing special. They took the young mother to intensive care, but they couldn't save her. The girl did not plan to become a mother from the beginning. She was not registered at the antenatal clinic. Later it became known, according to her friends, that she tried several times to get rid of the pregnancy, but the twins turned out to be very lively. And how the lucky mother thanked her. The aunt smiled again. Not like I found her later in the archives. Turns out this lady was the wife of a big boss. When she saw me, she started screaming up and down the street that I was an extortionist. She threatened to call the police. And how did that turn out? Nothing. I gave up and wished her well. I saw her around town a lot after that, but she always pretended she didn't know me. But I'm proud to, so I didn't try to be friends with her anymore. At first, however, I wanted very much to tell her husband everything, but then I changed my mind. I imagined how they would vent their anger on the child, and I lost all desire to defend the truth. The more the aunt opened the veil of secrecy, the clearer the picture became for Kathy. She collated some of the facts she knew and realized who the woman was. What remained unclear was the fate of the second child. But Nina shook her head, Kathy. It is this circumstance that weighs most heavily on me. I would probably give the rest of my life without regret to know anything about the second child. All I know is that she was sent to the nursing home because she was so weak. God only knows what happened to her afterwards. Kathy returned home with a strange feeling of emptiness. She did not accuse her aunt of any crime, although what she had done fell into that category. I don't know how I would have acted in my aunt's place, but how could I tie the ends of the same rope together? There were many more questions Kathy was trying to answer. She realized that no one gave her the right to interfere in people's destinies, but she could not remain indifferent. For a moment, she imagined how she would carry her aunt's secret for years, and she realized that she had to do everything possible to reunite her sisters. This year's autumn came unexpectedly yesterday. The sun was shining brightly, sparing no heat. But in the morning, the sky was covered with clouds and it began to rain. Maria looked out of the window. Mom, why is everything in life so unfair? I thought the weather would be nice on September 1, but the weather is so bad I don't even want to go out. Nina smiles. A famous song says that nature doesn't have bad weather. That's what the song says, but in real life it's different. It's good for you, Mom, that you're hiding in your living room now. And I'm stuck on the line in the rain. Nina put the omelette on the plates. Sit down, my sufferer, for breakfast to share your grief. I'm going to school for the line too. Maria is hanging from her mother's neck. It's so cool. Too bad we don't have a camera. Otherwise, you would have photographed me a couple of times. The woman smiled enigmatically again. And now a moment, attention. There will now be a singing magic session. Pick up Maria's phone. The little girl was speechless at the sight of a small box in her mother's hands. Mommy, it's amazing. A real smartphone is amazing, but it's very expensive. Maria pushed the box with the device away from her. Nina reassured her daughter. Don't worry, everything is fine. I've paid off all the loans and decided to give you a senior gift. By the way, I have some regular clients who I've also been doing their hair at home. They pay me a little extra for special services. Maria lost her appetite and couldn't take her eyes off the wonderful box. Mom, when I grow up, will I buy you a car? No, I'll give you a whole living room and you'll own it. Nina wanted to thank her daughter for her good intentions, but she didn't have time to do it because Maria suddenly asked Mom, "You think this girl who looks like me? She has her own smartphone." The woman was taken aback. Maria, why do you remember this girl? Sometimes I dream about her. She says we are sisters. As Nina pondered, Maria continued. Once I dreamed we were walking together. Then she asked me in a dream to go see her. Daughter, they're just dreams. You shouldn't believe them. The girl was confused, so she was unable to give a coherent answer. I have read that there are prophetic dreams in which everything is fulfilled exactly down to the smallest detail. Mom, after all, nothing prevents you and me from going to this city. I looked on the map. It's not far from here. We can walk, said Nina as sternly as possible. I don't think we should go out of our way for a video clip. At least that kind of trip is not on my agenda right now. Let's finish our breakfast and get out of here. All day long, this conversation with my daughter had been a nuisance. I was taking care of a customer. I was thinking about that other girl. The thought was so thick in the woman's mind that she couldn't take it anymore and called her sister. Christina, I need to ask you something. What is it? Tell me what's on your mind. It's not convenient on the phone. I heard Christina sigh. More secrets. Then let's talk on the phone. Sister, you know my finances are tight. Oh, wait, I can ask my neighbor. Oh, that's great. Call me tonight and we'll talk. At the appointed time, Nina told her daughter she had to go out for a while. Maria didn't mind. She was busy with her new smartphone. Mom, don't worry, I won't get bored. You can even go on a date. Aren't you tired of always being at home? Murmured the woman, young enough to give advice to adults. Trying not to make too much noise, Nina rang the doorbell next door. Molly looked at the visitors in surprise. Nina, what's wrong again? No, we're fine. We just need your help again to sweeten an awkward moment. The guest pulled out a beautiful box of chocolates. The neighbor smiled at the painful trio of fillies filled with walnuts. I'm an unconditional fan of this treat. Thanks, Nina. You're welcome. What's your problem? I need to make a call to a friend. No, not a friend, my sister. Now bear with me for 6 seconds. Sure enough, after a complicated manipulation by Aunt Dina, Christina appeared on the screen. She waved her hand in greeting. Hello, Nina, to you and your neighbor. Go on, say it. Something's come up. Nina gave an expressive look to the landlady, who hastened to erase it all with Teratorkin. I won't disturb you. I'll go put on some tea. Nina made sure that there were no extra ears in the room and hurried to tell her sister the gist of the case. Christina, try to find out where Maria came from and under what circumstances. 25 again. Why are you stirring up the past? Also, your Maria's life, though modest, is quite settled. But find out the truth. And what will that change? Christina, you see, some circumstances have come to light that have made me take this step. The fact is that my Maria most likely has a sister. Nina briefly told her about that clip with the girl, who was an exact copy of her adopted daughter. Christina Petrovna did not respond immediately. I must admit that I was dumbfounded, but I will try to find out everything quickly, although it will be difficult for me to do so. After all, access to the archives is only open to a separate list of people, and I haven't worked there for a long time. You still haven't told your mother that you're not related to her. Not yet, I can't decide. And it's wrong because I don't have anyone else in the world who is related to that girl. I understand. You'll hear from me in a couple of days. Next communication session. Nina waited with a fanatical desire to get to the truth, and her patience was rewarded. Her sister called a day earlier than promised. Nina, are you standing? What is there to swear then? I have so much news for you that you may not be able to stand. I've seen a lot of melodramas on TV, but I didn't expect such a story to unfold in front of my eyes. Anyway, this morning I went on your errand, and I came face to face with a lady who was also interested in the events of 12 years ago. Nina tensed up, and her heart was pounding so hard she couldn't make out what her sister was saying. Meanwhile, Christina kept pouring out information. There is no 100% certainty, but we can assume there are two of them. So she's a twin of another girl who is also being raised in foster care. But it's a complicated story, so I think you need to meet that woman and talk to her. Nina had not yet realized what her sister had told her. Speechless, she repeated over and over again. Yes, of course. Anyway, I'll give you this lady's phone number and you'll make arrangements with her. Whenever it's convenient for you to meet. Daria didn't know what to do with herself. The beginning of the school year didn't make her happy, because the class was as boring as last year. It was better to watch TV, even if there was only trash on the program. I can't wait for Daddy to come. How many times have I asked him to take me somewhere? He doesn't have time. Daria texted from corner to corner. Suddenly, she remembered Kathy and almost burst with longing. If I hadn't messed with her, she wouldn't have run away from us. Right now, I'd give anything for some sultana raisin oatmeal, which only Kathy could make so deliciously. I wonder where she is now. Daria started rummaging through her desk drawer, which was in chaos. Where's the damn note? I remember I didn't throw it away. Finally, after a long search, the girl retrieved a crumpled piece of paper from a selection of notebooks. She began to smooth it out, saying, "Here's Kathy's phone number. Now I'm going to call her and tell her what I'm going to tell her to make it sound credible. I'm going to tell her that my English is a mess." Daria realized that wasn't exactly a good reason to start the course. But there was no other option, and determinedly she dialed the former governess's number. Kathy answered no immediately. "Daria, weren't you expecting your call?" "No, it's all right." "Kathy, hi, I wouldn't bother you, but my English is a complete mess." "Have you changed?" They don't use literary words. If it cuts off your ears, I'm sorry, really, but I just wanted to hear from you, to know how you're doing in the capital of our region. And I'm looking forward to seeing you too. Daria felt something protective in her eyes, and her voice trailed off. "It's not true. I want to see you. That's a bad thing. Dad is always busy, and the new maid comes every other day. She cleans and cooks well. Still, it was better with you. Daria, I'll definitely come v. Arkhipov, as soon as I get a chance." Did the girl ask when you'll get that chance? "Maybe at the end of this week. Don't cry, I beg you very much." "All right, I'll try." After a brief conversation with Kathy, Daria's mood improved a little. She decided to please her father and set the table for dinner. Anthony was surprised at his daughter. "There's nothing wrong with you." "Yes, if you're surprised that I decided to be a bit of a hostess. I confess I was favorably affected by Kathy's call." "Kathy called you. How's she doing?" "I don't know the details, but she said she's fine. She works for the company as a translator. She's not married yet." "Wow, you even asked me that question. Don't you think it's unseemly for young girls to ask about other people's private lives?" Daria put her hands to her sides and defiantly asked Dad, "Is it decent to leave your only daughter alone in this huge house? I'll soon die of boredom." Anthony realized that the conversation was taking on an unpleasant tone. "Daughter, I promise that next weekend you and I will go out together. If you want, we'll go fishing or to the regional center. There's plenty of entertainment there." Daria gave him a mischievous look. "Next time we'll go fishing, but this Sunday we'll go to the park with you." "And what will we do there?" You'll relax and watch your daughter work. Dad, I've been asked to organize a fall dance in the park. I'll wear the same dress I wore with Kathy to the opening of the art center. The idea of a day out is much appreciated, Anthony. Thank you, daughter, for the invitation. But you must realize that my person will attract unnecessary attention. Dad, is it hard for you to say a few words? No, it's not. Let's just say you've convinced me. Both father and daughter were looking forward to Sunday. The opening was scheduled for 11 o'clock, but Daria left the house an hour early. Dad, try not to be late, or you'll miss all the fun. The man watched from the window as his daughter gracefully walked through the puddles left by yesterday's rain. He had always loved this activity, and now he admired the girl with a thrill in his heart. Soon as a bird, she will fly away from this house. And you, Anthony, will be left alone, though he had long since given up on himself. But as the years passed, more and more often the thought came to his mind that it was wrong not to have a life of his own. The man put on a strict jacket and looked critically at his reflection. The mayor was also a human being, and perhaps he deserved attention and understanding. There were already many citizens in the park. It was only a few minutes before the event, and Anthony tried to find his daughter with his eyes. Suddenly, on one of the paths, he saw his daughter's face and waved to her. Strangely, his daughter did not respond to his greeting and even turned away. The man muttered, "What's the matter? Hasn't she noticed me?" His elevated status did not allow him to shout or take other actions that could be taken badly. So Antonio headed towards the road where the daughter had passed. He was greeted by the townspeople and responded to everyone with a smile and warm words. This distracted the mayor, who finally lost sight of his daughter. Suddenly, a woman's voice sounded nearby. "Maria, get out of the way. Can't you see you are disturbing the people?" Antonio turned around abruptly and froze in astonishment. In front of him stood a girl like two peas in a pod, similar to Daria. Only her hair was shorter and her attire different. For a moment he felt dizzy, but was pulled out of his unpleasant state by the same female voice. "Are you sick? You've gone very pale. Maria, give it to me. You will see that the man feels sick." Anthony looked at the woman, then at the girl named Maria, and closed his eyes sharply. When he cautiously opened his eyes, the couple was still watching him from the side of the stage. Triumphant music was heard, and Daria Anthony jumped onto the stage to applause. "Hello, my favorite Arkhipov. We're having a party today, and my friends, and I want to give you all a good mood." A burst of applause spread through the park. Anthony still had not managed to get away from the mom with the girl who looked so much like his daughter. At first, this fact didn't even strike him as odd, and he wanted to approach the stage. But Maria said in a very loud voice, Mom, look, it's the girl from the video. Can I come closer? I really want to meet her." The woman tried to hold the girl. "Maria, let's put the introductions on hold. Your interference could interfere with the festivities." "Mom, I'll watch quietly." "Don't you realize this is the girl who asked me in her dreams to come?" The woman was confused and looked to Anthony for support. It's a striking resemblance, isn't it? The hostess at the party looks a lot like my daughter. I wonder how old she is. Something very painful crushed the man's throat. He loosened the knot in his tie. "This is my daughter Daria. She turned 12 in May." The woman rejoiced, "And my Maria's birthday is in early June. She and I and another acquaintance are traveling to her city. And what exactly attracted you to this city? If it's no secret." The woman didn't have time to answer because the host invited the mayor on stage. Anthony walked back down the path, only in the opposite direction. Behind him came a murmur. He saw the mayor's daughter and that girl. She's a lot alike. The only way that could happen is if those young women were twins. The man had heard it all, but he had no right to reply to people's comments. There was no way for him to stop or leave the park. During the short drive he had made to the site of the next performance, Anthony had had time to change his mind, but he wasn't naive enough to believe in coincidence. Daria couldn't see or even guess what was going on down there by the ramp. She was enjoying her next moment of glory and reveling in the applause and appreciative crowd. When Anthony took the stage, he handed her the microphone, and she mentioned herself on the sidelines. Throughout her many years in a position of responsibility, Anthony realized that ordinary people appreciate more sincere words that come from the heart. He did not abuse the attention of the audience and briefly greeted everyone present. On this beautiful September day, I would like to wish all of you, dear compatriots, a festive atmosphere. And may all the homes of our dear city be bright and welcoming. The voices of his children rang out. The party continued, and Antonio began to think feverishly about what he should do next. His head was splintering with all sorts of thoughts. When he saw Kathy at his side, Kathy, Anthony, if only for a second, forgot everything because Kathy impressed him. There was something very different about her, as if she were a compressed spring. Kathy held her head high, her gaze straight and open. But seconds passed, and Anthony let out a long sigh. It would be interesting, of course, to chat with her, to find out how she was doing. But that didn't matter to him at the moment. He was about to tell Kathy. Daria walked past him. She almost made the mistake of running him over, literally bumping into Kathy. She smiled and hugged Daria. So you keep carrying everything in your path. A while ago, Daria would have been offended, even responded rudely. Now she was smiling. Kathy, did you see my performance? Of course I saw it, and I wasn't the only one. Kathy looked at Anthony, who was staring at the girl his daughter looked so much like. Anthony, if you're looking for Maria and her mother, they're waiting for us at the cafe on the boardwalk. The man turned slowly toward Kathy. He felt the earth tremble beneath his feet. All the worst suspicions were beginning to come true. Had she hit her head? No, he doesn't want to know anything, let alone change anything. Daria is his daughter, and no other situation interests him. He was about to tell Kathy, but suddenly the thought came to his mind that maybe Daria is his daughter. And that girl too, although it wasn't impossible. He had been several times to ultrasounds with his wife, and had clearly seen a boy. Kathy, I'm sorry, but Daria and I can't go today. Kathy interrupted him. Anthony, we have to. You realize it's better to talk. They're not accusing you of anything. People just want to know the truth. And the man who caused all this wants to be rid of this sin before he dies. Daria looked fearfully at her father. Dad, what is he talking about? Kathy smiled at him. Daria, are you afraid? You've never been afraid of anything. If your father decides to do it, there's someone I'm going to introduce you to. Daria's in a pose. Actually, she has friends waiting for her. Well, I don't know, maybe she doesn't want to meet anyone. I've got Anthony interrupting Daria's daughter. We're going to have to go because I'm not going to be able to sleep well now anyway. Dad, what's wrong? He shrugged his shoulders. If Mom were alive, she could probably shed some light on all this. After saying that, Daria calmed down. Kathy and Anthony stepped forward, with Daria trailing behind. Kathy, what did you have to do with this? I had nothing to do with it. My aunt. We don't socialize enough to know the details, or I used to. And now that my aunt is dying, I wanted to know if the other girl was alive. It just so happened that we all met at the same time. Together, we were able to discover many interesting things. The man was completely lost. He didn't know what he was going to hear. But of one thing he was sure, it was not good. They approached the summer cafe. And then they heard Mom, look, there she is. Daria stopped. She looked at the man who had spoken. Then she looked at her father. Dad, who is it? I thought it was just a dream. I've dreamed about her several times. Anthony convinced his daughter. I don't know the rest either. I hope it all becomes clear now. He turned his eyes to Maria's mother and froze. Nina was looking at Daria with a kind of greediness. She slowly shifted her gaze to him. Anthony, Kathy looked at them in confusion. I don't understand. Do you two know each other? Anthony nodded slowly. They hastened to add, we only crossed paths a couple of times. That was a long time ago. The woman couldn't tell that about 8 years ago, Anthony had somehow been drawn back to her city. And lucky for her, at her beauty salon, she needed to get in shape because, she said, she was about to grow pigtails for her job. Nina and the other girls tried to explain to him that it was a women's salon. But Anthony wouldn't listen to anyone. So Minna, in order not to make a fuss with such a client, offered to cut his hair. She left a very generous tip and then apologized, saying it had been a hard day. And an hour later, negotiations. Apparently, the negotiation was over before it began. Because when she left, Anthony was waiting for her. Anthony was never much of a go-getter, but this time it was like he was on a roll. And Nina wouldn't let the men near her. And here she thought they were newcomers, so no one owed anyone anything. They actually only saw each other 3 times. And then Anthony went off to his own town. Nina tried to put it out of her mind. And now that he was in front of her, she looked at him in confusion. She thought about the fact that 5 minutes ago it had seemed to her that her problems were of universal proportions. But now they had become of totally inexplicable proportions. Everyone sat down at the table. Maria and Daria couldn't take their eyes off each other. Kathy's gaze immediately went to the professor. I think it's best if the girls go outside, let them talk. While we're here solving adult problems. Neither Daria nor Maria. They didn't argue. They went downstairs. And the last thing Kathy heard was, "What kind of ice cream do you like?" "I'm from school." "You're kidding. I just eat it too." Kathy smiled. How much less do rule kids have frosting and stuff? What's to stop them from communicating in a second? Kathy had already sat down at the table. Well, who's going to start? Anthony raised his hand. Let me do it. Daria's daughter is mine and my spouse's. I took care of her throughout her pregnancy. We went to the doctor together, so we have nothing criminal. I'm sure science will find many explanations for this similarity. Nina nodded. I would like to support Anthony. We also took Maria from the orphanage. Would anyone really believe that Anthony's family separated the children? Surely there's an explanation. Kathy sighed. Let me get started then. Anthony looked at his former housekeeper. Yes, Kathy, I'd like to know why we're here. My aunt has been a midwife all her life. Nina listened attentively to Anthony, and as the story progressed, lowered her head. That's how she knew Adriana was capable of doing strange things. But in order not to tell her that her son had died, the man averted his gaze to the girls, who were sitting on the bench and talking animatedly. When they were side by side, the resemblance was entirely undeniable. Kathy finished, then added it so happened that my aunt's remorse and your meeting coincided. Now I can tell you that the other girl is fine. It's up to you to sue her or not. But she's not going to get a trial anyway. Anthony smiled sadly. Why would he sue her? She made a few people happy, at least for a while. Would the girls have been better off in an orphanage? Kathy stood up. Then I guess I'll be going. No need to go to Auntie's house. I'm sure you two have a lot to talk about. When she left, Anthony felt confused. There was music and voices nearby, and he looked at Nina, confused. What do we do now? Nina didn't have time to answer, because a loud, indignant voice could be heard nearby. Anthony, I've been looking for you. You can't just disappear. You've got the wrong status. Next to the table was Vanessa. At another time, Anthony would have been happy to see her, but not now. Vanessa, hi. I have the day off today, and I thought I'd spend it with my daughter. What's up with you? Vanessa couldn't take her eyes off Nina. Inside, everything was churning. She had been looking for years for a way to get closer to Anthony, as they say, little by little. And here she was planning to spend with her daughter. Vanessa invited the tongue, but it was too late. Anthony's gaze became one. Everything she had worked so hard to build between them crumbled in an instant. Vanessa, are you forgetting? I'm sorry, Anthony, you've got it all wrong. Vanessa hurried out, but when she came down the steps, she froze. There were 2 Daria sitting across from her. True, one was a little thinner and didn't look quite so brazen. The woman turned around. She looked at the couple seated at the Euless table, narrowed her eyes. Well, that got rid of the mayors. She walked briskly down the path, plotting a plan in her head in case things didn't go her way. Daria gave Vanessa a dirty look. Maria immediately asked, Who is that? That's my father's assistant, who sleeps and dreams of moving in with us. Why, he doesn't have a home of his own. Daria laughed. Maria, you're kidding. She wants to be the mayor's wife, that is, my father's wife. Maria even blushed, then burst out laughing. I understand that she doesn't stand a chance. I won't let that happen. Anthony finally looked at Nina. "Hi, Nina." "Hi, Tony." Nina averted her eyes in embarrassment. This was definitely someone she never thought she'd see again in her life. Then it all came up. Maria, the illness, her husband leaving her. Tony, for her, it was a breath of air, a kind of exercise. But Nina clearly understood that it was before exercise and nothing more. When they were saying goodbye, Anthony asked, "We'll see each other again." Nina then shrugged her shoulders. "Why? We both get some rest, relax, and that's it." He nodded. He's right. At home, his wife and daughter were waiting for him. And all in all, frankly speaking, Anthony didn't realize how it had all turned out. It was as if something had hit him over the head, so he decided to forget it all as well. I think we need to figure out what to do next. We can't just leave because our daughters will have too many questions. And it wouldn't be right. They're twins. Nina sighed. They lived in peace. And here they were. She didn't understand how things would go on. How to explain to the girls that, although they were sisters, they would have to live in different cities and with different families. I don't know what's next. Maria is my daughter, and that says it all. Anthony looked somberly at Nina. Daria is my daughter, but that doesn't stop them from being sisters. Nina agreed and nodded. And the man asked Nina, "Where are you staying?" "I haven't been anywhere yet. I'm sure we'll be here for more than a day. Maybe you should come to our house. We have a big house, plenty of room for everyone. It'll give us time to figure out what to do next. This is awkward. What will your wife say? Adriana died a few years ago, so apart from the housekeeper, no one ever goes there." When the girls heard they were going to Doria's house from behind, they jumped up and down and squealed. Wistfully thought again that nothing would happen like before. In the evening, when the girls had settled into Doria's room, Anthony picked up the wine. "Nina, maybe we should have a little drink, so to speak, to take the edge off the nervous system." Nina nodded. They sat by the fireplace and Anthony spoke. "The biggest shock for me was that my wife didn't tell me anything. I lost my son, but I lived and knew nothing about it. I love Daria very much. She is my family. How could someone do this to me? And why? Why didn't she take both girls? For a while we thought we were never going to have children. We went to all kinds of doctors. The last one seemed to be a success. Adriana said when it was done that it was the last time. She said there would be no more attempts. Apparently it was out of desperation. Nina was quiet for a while. When I took Maria, I was told the girl was sick and weak. I agreed to everything. I was going to treat her all her life. My husband was sterile, and so we decided to take the baby." Nina smiled sadly. Actually, it was his idea. It took me a long time to decide. I kept thinking I wouldn't be able to love my baby. As the years went by, I accepted. When I took Maria in my arms, I realized that I was willing to do anything for her. Love at first sight. Anthony looked at her husband. Her husband lived with us for a while when Maria started to grow up. He left. He said he couldn't love her, and that I should choose Maria or him. Anthony gasped. How? How can you put such a choice in front of a person? Nina shrugged. Well, it's like this. I'm going to rest. Too many things today. My head is spinning. Sure, go ahead. Tell him Maria has a heart defect. The doctors promised that with the transition age it should go away. But for now, we're on medication. The next day, Anthony left while everyone slept. Vanessa greeted him with a cold smile. She couldn't contain herself. Next to Anthony, she saw only herself. And here was a complete stranger. Good morning, Vanessa. Give me the details of the best pediatric cardiologist in the world. She closed the door behind her and the maid's mouth dropped open. Is Daria sick? I wish she were. That's just nonsense. Vanessa immediately twitched. What a lot of thoughts were going through her head. She picked up the phone and immediately calmed down. Running errands for her boss was something she was very good at. Nina decided that they would return home in the afternoon. After all, it was possible to agree over the phone. What was there to negotiate? She wasn't going to change anything. Girls, they could be long-distance friends. And she wanted very much to leave because Anthony's presence near her made her not revolt about herself. What nonsense was going through her head? They had no relationship that could be remembered simply by meeting on a physiological level. An inner voice whispered viciously, "A lot of people wanted to meet you on that level. Somehow you turned them all down, but not him." But the plans didn't come to fruition. After lunch, which they had prepared with the girls, Anthony arrived. "Nina, get ready. There's a very good pediatric cardiologist waiting. Let him take a look at Maria." Nina wanted to refuse, but then changed her mind. No need for unnecessary consultations. The doctor insisted on a more thorough examination, and they had to stay a few more days. And later the doctor called them back to his office. "I have nothing to tell them. Most of the time these problems end when the child is in transition. But in very rare cases, probably 1 in 5,000, not the other way around, they get worse." This is how her child's illness progressed. Nina looked at the doctors with confusion, but they told her, "I understand. But if you doubt my competence, ask the attending physician to order tests, not to wait for everything to go away. What do? We have to operate. We can do it here. But you realize that the heart is not the stomach. It's too risky. If you don't operate, you don't have to operate. Maria will not die like in the soap opera. It's just that her lifestyle will be very different from that of her peers. And of course, any nervous shock, too much fatigue, and many other factors could be fatal. We can think." Of course, they left the clinic, and then Anthony spoke. "Nina, it's up to you, of course. But think about it. Such an opportunity to give Mary a chance to live like everyone else, to run. Have fun. I'm everything." Nina wiped away tears. She tried not to think about anything bad. In the evening, she talked with Maria. The girl's eyes lit up immediately. "Mommy, they're going to let me ride the highest carousel. Besides, Daria and I have decided to go climbing." Nina sighed. Her daughter was right. She wants to live a full life. In the morning during breakfast, Anthony was watching the news. Suddenly he froze. Nina froze too. She asked for the weekend for now. The housekeeper said she would at least cook to pay him back for living here. The local news was on TV, and they were showing their girls there. The announcer was broadcasting cheerfully. "It seems our mayor or his wife had a wild youth. It's not clear why we only know of one boy. The answer is simple." Just then, a cardiac clinic appeared on the screen. Where did Maria come from? The announcer's voice reached a climax. It's very simple. The second child is sick, and it seems that the parents have abandoned her. Before the announcer could finish, Anthony's phone rang. Sure enough, it was Stephen. "Anthony, what's going on there?" "Good morning, Stephen. There's nothing wrong." "Do you watch television?" "Of course I do, and I will even prosecute the journalists for defamation." "The governor has slowed down a bit. I'll wait for you at my house. As soon as you can leave." Anthony turned off the phone, sighed, "I have to go to the region." "Nina's angry," he said. "God, now you're in trouble because of us. That's ridiculous. What's that got to do with you? It's a shame we can't meet Maria. Who would have thought? What kind of technology? I thought you had to be in the hospital for 6 months after heart surgery." Anthony was glad that Maria was okay, but he was also upset because he realized that there was no longer anything to keep them in this town, which meant they would have to part very soon. Anthony is very used to having 2 Darias at home. He knew the other one was Maria, but they looked very much alike. He got used to late-night conversations in the kitchen with Nina. He had not realized before how interesting Nina was. He had to stay in the region after a conversation with the governor, which, by the way, even brought them closer together. There were other pressing matters. Daria was not worried about Daria. She knew Nina would take care of everything, and she flew home as if on wings. It had been a long time since she had the feeling that a whole family was waiting for her at home. Anthony stopped in front of the door. Family? Yes, of course. Only now did he realize why everyone felt so good in the house. Because they felt like family. That's what it was all about. You don't have to make anything up. You just have to be a family. Nina would make the best wife. He really hoped the woman wouldn't reject him. It's not about her as a hostess and mother, but as a woman. But why did it take her so long to realize it? After all, from the very moment they had seen each other for the second time recently, He had already realized that he didn't want to let her go. And it wasn't even because of Maria. Anthony opened the door. It was unusually quiet in the house, and he entered the room. Daria was sitting quietly on the couch. "Hello, Daria, where is everyone?" Daria looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Dad, they're gone. They've gone all the way home. When we were like this, Dad didn't do anything to make them stay. You could have, I know, because you don't care about anyone or anything but your job." He couldn't find anything to say to his daughter, so he raised his voice. Daria calmed down immediately. Daria wiped her eyes. "That's right, Dad. How else could you hide your misdeed without yelling at the child?" Daria disappeared into her room. Anthony stared in confusion at Daria's door. In the evening, Daria did not come out of her room. Anthony knocked on her door. "Daria, let's have dinner." "Thanks, Dad. I don't want to." Neither did he. "Let's eat." Anthony had never thought he would be so lonely without Nina and Maria. He hardly slept at night. He wondered what Nina was doing now. Would she remember him? Daria went out for a quiet breakfast. Anthony couldn't help himself. "Daria, have you called Maria? How are they doing?" "She's doing well." "Dad?" Daria, yes, she had tea and got up before nightfall. Daria, Dad. The daughter's gone. Anthony felt like he was to blame for her. And not just her, but everyone. He pounded his fist on the table. "After all, I'm a grown man and I can afford to do whatever I want." He caught up with Daria already at the school gate, stopping beside her. His daughter looked at him in surprise. "Something happened at Dad's house. Are you okay?" "Yes, but not today." "It in the car. Why? Where are we going?" "We're going to Nina and Maria's." Daria stared at him for a few seconds, then got into the car and hugged her father. "Dad, this is the right thing to do." Nina prepared the tea, put the cookies on the table. "Maria, the tea is ready." The daughter went into the kitchen and sat down on the sofa. "Mom, I really don't want tea." "Maria, you have to eat well, and now you don't eat anything." Maria picked up the cup and took a sip. "Mom, when do you think Daria and I will see each other again?" Nina was confused. She wasn't ready to answer those questions now because her soul was bleeding. "I don't know, my child. There are some circumstances. These circumstances are you and Anthony." Nina was embarrassed. "No, of course not. It's just that life is a very complicated thing." "Mom, life is complicated, of course. But I think adults like to complicate things even when they're simple. We saw that something was going on between you, and you pretended it wasn't so." Nina stroked Maria's head. "Daughter, when you grow up, you will understand. Anthony is the mayor. He's in the public eye. He's a different kind of person, if you can call him that. His family is on TV a lot. You and I are so different. Such different people, anyway. There can't be anything in common." "Mom, that's not right. It's people that matter, not where they work." Nina didn't have time to answer because the doorbell rang. "Mom, I'll get it." Nina nodded. She got up and looked out the window. How strange. They had the same car as Anthony's in their yard. She hadn't seen it before. Maybe it's not our head. Oh, those chimeras. "Hello, Nina." The woman shuddered. Slowly, she turned around. Anthony was standing next to her. "Nina, I couldn't follow you. Marry me. We'll have 2 daughters and the happiest life in the world." Nina couldn't say anything. She looked at Anthony and tears ran down her cheeks. Then he held her tightly against him. "That's it. Say no more. 2 hours to pack. We'll figure out the rest later." Vanessa dialed Anthony's number for the umpteenth time. She hated it when the mayor was out of sight. Of course, she had no right to control him. But every time he disappeared for even an hour, she thought it was from another woman who could pose a danger to her Vanessa. Finally, Anthony picked up the phone. For a few seconds, Vanessa heard rustling sounds. Then Anthony finally said hello. "Vanessa, is something wrong?" "No, but I need to know where you are." "What if something is wrong?" Vanessa listened clearly to every sound coming through the phone. "I'm in the city, Vanessa. I'm at the door of the registry office." Apparently, Vanessa's voice changed because Anthony was quick to say, "Vanessa, of course, you'll be the guest of honor at my wedding." Vanessa threw the phone on the floor. She was on the verge of tears. She had been preparing for many years for Anthony to take her to the registry office. 2 months later, the governor himself visited her town. The occasion was important. The mayor of the city was getting married. The occasion was grand. And when Anthony told Stephen that he and Nina didn't want a lavish celebration, Stephen was outraged. And there's more. It's not every day a mayor gets married, much less a good mayor. Nina was. Anthony looked at her with a kind of mute astonishment. He had seen before that Nina was beautiful, but now he realized that he had never met a prettier woman. Next to them were Maria and Daria. They wore the same lush dresses, and people whispered. No one could understand how people who were about to get married could have girls who looked like 2 peas in a pod. I now pronounce you man and wife. The words sounded so solemn that even Vanessa could barely hold back tears and immediately held out a handkerchief. Deputy Mayor Vanessa looked at him in surprise. She had only recently come to work for them. And if Vanessa wasn't mistaken, he was single. She smiled. Thank you so much. You are so kind. You have to be so happy for strangers. Vanessa smiled in satisfaction. It can't be. Can strangers be strangers working together? The man reached out for her elbow, and Vanessa didn't hesitate to put her hand on his. There must have been so much happiness in Anthony's new family that there was enough for everyone around them.
Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. It was 700 hours. It was time to leave the house. Stephen carefully stepped out into the hallway so as not to wake his mother, who had the only day off in the last week and a half. In the semi-darkness, Stephen looked for a brush to shine his shoes. Why don't you turn on a light? Why are you walking in the dark? Stephen twitched. His mother stood in the doorway in surprise, dressed in a terry cloth robe. It was obvious from her face that she hadn't had a good night's sleep and was probably torn with her son. Jesus, Mom, shrieked Stephen, theatrically clutching at his heart. Why scare you in the dark? Because I didn't want yours, but something got in the way. But apparently it was me who woke you up. You're giving me a hard time. You should get married. Mom, stop raising your voice a little, objected Stephen. If you want me to move out, just tell me so. Well, go on. That's not the point. I'd be happy to have you live with me forever. You're not really 20 years old anymore, are you? No. I should have a family by now. Or at least a girlfriend. All I have on my mind right now is my thesis. Okay, I gotta go. I have to teach my first class. I don't want the teacher to be late. Well, you might want to think about it. I've got one. Stephen didn't want to listen to his mom and quickly ran out of the apartment. He was tired of listening to such conversations. For the last year and a half, his mother often started them. At first, the young man did not pay attention to them. After all, every mother sooner or later talks about marriage or marriage. However, Camille turned out to be a more persistent woman than she seemed to her son. Almost every day, she told Stephen directly that he was lonely. And if her son didn't do something about it in the near future, he would be left with his nose to the grindstone. Maybe she's right about something. I've never been in a serious relationship. I spent all my time studying. He thought to himself during his mother's fiery speeches. Stephen was a stocky brunette with blue eyes. As soon as he was born, everyone around him said that girls would chase after him. The people around him were right. However, the guy did not pay any attention to this. Since childhood, he was attracted to books on the world around him, classic fiction. Playing soccer with boys in the yard is not for him, but he still had to go out, as Mom insisted on taking sunbaths and daily told about the benefits of fresh air. These few hours were hard. Stephen tried to pretend he was having fun. He kept in touch with the boys. And the time spent socializing with his peers, Stephen always regretted. Since there was a sea at home, read books that his father brought him when he came from business trips. Christopher, Stephen's dad, is a lifelong engineer at an aircraft factory. He is considered a valuable member of the workforce. so management often sends him to other plants for training. Camille and Christopher lived together for 12 years. This time was the happiest for Stephen, despite the increasing quarrels of his parents. As a child, he did not pay much attention to it. However, as a teenager, after every time he heard his mother screaming, he felt as if a knife had pierced his heart. Stephen realized that the divorce would not pass. He dreamed of staying with his father afterward, as there was something more than father-son love that bound him to him. Christopher, as well as Stephen, was crazy about reading books. Every week he would bring 5 new works into the house. For some people, that might have been enough for a month or 2. However, Stephen's father would devour the books he brought in within 4 days. The salesman in the bookstores thought he didn't work. That's why he read so much. That was not the case. Christopher worked 8-10 o'clock a.m. jobs at the company. He'd come home, help his wife with the housework. He didn't have any personal time until after the sun went down. Reading took up a lot of time he could have spent sleeping. But sleep, as they say, is for wimps. Stephen still remembers getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, walking down the corridor, and in the far room modestly burning Boss. Dad read until 3-4 o'clock. Of course, he didn't get much sleep, but his favorite occupation helped him to relax after a hard day's work and the next scandals with Camille. As a child, Stephen tried to understand why books attracted his father so much. When he asked him what was so fascinating about them, his father handed him a book by Jack London called Hearts of Three. Stephen did not want to read this work because he thought it was written for girls since it had the word hearts in the title. He overpowered himself. He came home after school, did his homework, and opened the book. Jack London's world sucked the boy in so much that he lost track of time. By 12 o'clock at night, he found that he had already read 2/3 of the work. He was eager to find out how the story would end. However, a shout from his mother at the other end of the house, who saw the light in his room, made it clear that it was time to go to bed. From then on, Christopher began to buy not 5 but 10 books a week. Camille did not welcome such a hobby, as she believed that the money spent could have been used for home improvements, upcoming renovations, the purchase of her personal car. But also, after all, the money should be given to her mother. Only she would know how to handle it. Yes, that's exactly what she thought. When the divorce began, Stephen was invited into the courtroom, asked who he wanted to stay with. Naturally, the boy, without hesitation, admitted that he would be more comfortable being with his father after he expressed his opinion. He was escorted out of the room where the meeting was taking place. Stephen was not worried, as he was confident that the judge would listen to him. When the hearing was over, the doors opened, and he saw his mother's happy face. Behind her walked Christopher, looking him in the eye. Stephen understood everything. It turns out that his mother has provided the judge with irrefutable evidence that it is better for her son to be with her, and only she knows how to properly build him a happy future. After this turn of events, Stephen was depressed. However, he came to terms with the decision. His father promised that he would visit him, often taking him for weekend sleepovers. This was the only thing that gave the boy strength. The years went by. Dad kept his word, despite the fact that it had been more than 15 years since the divorce. Christopher called his son every day, asking how he was doing. These conversations were a real outlet for Stephen. In them, they shared their opinions about the books they had read, and also recommended each other new works to familiarize themselves with modern literature. Because of the fact that the boy was fond of reading, Camille was afraid that he would enter the philological faculty or a higher education institution, the direction of which is devoted to the study of literature. It was a surprise to everyone that Stephen decided to follow in his father's footsteps. It cannot be said that he had no trouble getting into the first year of the best institute in the city. However, luck was on his side. Applicants with the highest scores chose other educational institutions, so Stephen got on the lists of people on the budget-based training. The first 2 courses were easy for him, as there were a lot of general subjects, and when the 3rd year began, Stephen realized that it would be difficult, But he was ready for everything. It was Christopher who helped him to keep his spirits up throughout his studies. He supported him in every way he could. When Stephen was down and his father saw it, he would call him to his workplace and show him in detail what he was going to do when he graduated. Camille was not thrilled with her son's choice of profession. She thought that he should have chosen a more promising specialty, such as programming. After all, in her opinion, people there do nothing and shovel money. Stephen's mother worked in the beauty industry, making women irresistible, before attending an important event, as well as emphasized their beauty in everyday life. She worked as a makeup stylist, did hairstyles, makeup. The whole working day she spent on her feet, from which she was very tired. But she liked to feel useful and needed. Despite the fact that she was constantly surrounded by friends and her son, she was always lonely, although she did not admit it to anyone. So she tried to work without days off, and only when the pain in her legs became unbearably strong. She would take a vacation, but no more than one day. Because of this rigid working schedule, Camille Stephen managed to do everything during the day. After school, he would come home, do his homework, cook dinner, and spend time reading books. At the institute, he seemed close to everyone, so he had few friends. Stephen did not regret it, because he thought that there was nothing to talk about with these people, as they were only interested in partying and parties. Stephen's personal life was also going downhill. No, he wasn't a virgin. He had a couple one-night stands with girls he didn't know very well. It wasn't done out of love, just to drown his physiological needs. He wanted to find his love, but things were the same as with friends. The girls were only interested in expensive travel gifts of self-development. They clearly didn't want to engage. Why didn't they arouse interest in Stephen? After successfully completing the master's program, Stephen decided that he would continue his studies and enrolled in graduate school. Well established himself among the teaching staff. The guy was entrusted with conducting some disciplines. He liked to spend time with students. He paid enough attention to each of them to make them understand the subject and successfully pass the exam in the future. That day, after talking to his mother about the urgent need to get married, Stephen had to conduct the first pair in the subject of electrical engineering for Camille. The young man was 10 minutes late for the pair. By this time, all the students were in the assembly. They were very fond of the subjects that the young man was conducting. After the roll call was conducted, the young instructor noticed that there was one girl present in the classroom who was not on the list. He asked her to introduce herself and then found out that she had transferred to this group from another major. She was a fragile girl with big blue eyes, mustache, and hair. She stood out from the rest of the group. Therefore, Stephen figured she would have a hard time. As the pair came to the end of the class, the students thanked the instructor and scattered to go about their business on break. After Stephen collected all his materials from his desk into his briefcase, he noticed that the new girl was still in the classroom. "Stephen, hello. My name is Smith Emily." With shyness in her voice, said the student. "Good afternoon," smiled and answered the teacher, Smith Emily. "I am glad to welcome you to our group. Of course, it seems strange to me that you decided to transfer in the middle of the school year. I think it's going to be difficult for you." "Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I realize I missed a few classes, and I can't hide the fact that it was really hard for me right now. I didn't understand anything. Therefore, I would like to ask you to recommend me some literature that would allow me to catch up." At that moment, Emily put her purse on the table, opened it, and began to look for her daily planner. While Stephen was thinking about which method books to recommend to the student, he watched her every move and noticed that there were error search markers in the bag. "Are you interested in drawing?" the teacher inquired. "What? Oh yeah, you know, it's a real passion of mine. I have been drawing as long as I can remember. Can I see your works?" Emily did not refuse the teacher, despite the fact that her works were somewhat frank. The student confidently handed Stephen her beach sketch. The young man was at first embarrassed by the student's candid work, but continued to familiarize himself with her work. The spreads depicted nude and semi-nude, nude, male and female bodies, mostly without faces. All the reading lines and reliefs were done so filigree that Stephen could not think that the author of these works is a girl who is not yet 25. You know, they are very beautiful works. Continuing to look, Stephen said, I can't understand one thing, how you ended up in engineering. Oh, Stephen, it's all very complicated. My father wanted me to get a good profession that would bring me a lot of money in the future. I don't like to argue with him. So I went to your institute. What do you mean, our institute? But it's just that my home is 150 kilometers away. From here I decided that it is better to leave my parents' house, to study at the university as my father wants, and to do my favorite business, like I want to do. Yes, yes, I understand you. As no one else smiling, said Stephen. After a short conversation with the new student, the young teacher dictated to her a list of teaching aids that would help her to understand the essence of the subject faster. At this, the young people said goodbye. Emily went to the next pair, and Stephen went to the department, where he was preparing for the next lecture. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. The young man excused himself and went home. On the way, he stopped by a bookstore where he bought 2 new detectives. Stephen was in a great hurry, as he dreamed of starting reading as soon as possible. After all, it was these books that caused a great stir among the population of the whole planet. Opening the door to the apartment, he noticed that on the threshold there were 2 pairs of women's shoes, which his mother did not have. Apparently, she had visitors. Mom, hi. I'm not hungry. I'll go to my room. I bought new books. I'll read. Oh, Sashenka, we've been waiting for you. Why did you take so long? Out of breath, Mother asked. I had to replace Rick, who got sick. The students have exams coming up, so they can't miss classes. God, but you don't take care of yourself at all. Come on, I'd better introduce you to someone. Camille took Stephen by the hand and led him into the kitchen. When he crossed the threshold, he noticed a smartly set table where 2 women were sitting. One of them was about 45 years old, and the other was apparently her daughter, because he gave her a look no older than 21. Stephen immediately realized what was going on. Despite this, he was in shock, because his mother had never allowed herself such antics before. I don't get it. Is this matchmaking? Are we living in the 19th century? Son, can you believe it? Evelyn just happened to be walking by our house with her daughter Jenna. We ran into each other in the driveway when I was coming back from the store. Evelyn is an old friend of mine. I'd really like you to meet her, Camille said without making a show of it. It didn't bother her that there was some confusion on her son's face. Hello, Evelyn. Nice to meet you. Jenna, my respects. At that moment, Stephen pretended to take off his hat. Camille was shocked by this prank. Her son had always had good manners, and what had happened to him now was beyond her comprehension. The woman quickly came to her senses and continued to steer the conversation in the right direction. Jenna sat with the man at the table. It was immediately obvious that she was not happy about this turn of events either. However, the simplicity of the young man helped her to relax and enjoy the conversation. After looking around the table, Stephen concluded that his mother had put a lot of effort and spent a lot of money to prepare all these exquisite dishes. He had no other choice, so he sat down at the table and started talking to his guest. Stephen. Evelyn, you can imagine. Jenna graduated from medical school this year. She was going to enter the institute. However, at a family council, they decided that the best medical training happens abroad. So Camille and Wendy decided that Jenna would go to medical school in Germany. Yes, they did. But I realized that Evelyn and Wendy had decided. I'm interested in a different question, and Jenna agrees with their decision. Stephen asked, shifting his eyes to the girl. Yes, of course. Stephen, can you imagine what opportunities will open up before me? It's the most advanced technology out there. Pharmaceutical companies annually release hundreds of new drugs that allow you to fight diseases. People with cancer are successfully treated abroad, while in Russia patients die for lack of quality treatment. My dad is the best oncologist in the region. I am very interested in what he does. Our whole family is medical professionals. My mom works with kids. She's a pediatrician. So anyway, I get it. My mom found me not just a bride, but a good match. We're definitely in the 19th century. Stephen thought to himself. The conversation lasted until about 2 o'clock. During this time, Camille managed to tell all the background of her son, and also to show a picture of him as a little boy, lying with a bare butt. Stephen found it difficult to control his emotions. However, he managed to do it. During the meal, the young man saw that in the eyes of Evelyn and her daughter Jenna there is interest, which increases with every minute spent in this house. At one point, Camille called Evelyn into the room to show her collection of house flowers. Of course, this was all done intentionally to leave Stephen and Jenna alone. This made the young man feel even more awkward than when he came home and discovered his guests. The girl started talking about herself, how much she wanted to help people, about how she likes to spend her free time with her friends in cafes or clubs. Stephen had mixed feelings about it. The girl was not stupid. It was hard for him to understand how such a desire to study could intersect with the constant partying in her life. Speech. Jenna was coherent and literate. She had clear thoughts in her head, interesting plans for her life. Yes, she was undoubtedly not the type that usually surrounded Stephen. Despite this, the guy did not feel any attraction to this girl at all. The bulk of the time while the young people were alone, Jenna spoke. Sometimes she realized that she was becoming too much, and she began to ask Stephen questions. Mostly they were questions about his personal life. It made him uncomfortable because that was the life he had been counting and didn't have. He struggled to get out of awkward situations, answered uncomfortable questions, and secretly wished it would all be over as quickly as possible. Late in the afternoon, Evelyn and Jenna started to head home. The prospective mother-in-law showered Stephen with many compliments. In doing so, she hinted to her daughter that she had an enviable groom standing in front of her. In her opinion, he was promising because he was the son of a famous engineer. Stephen thanked the guests for the pleasant conversation, smiled, and escorted them to the door. What do you think? It was immediately clear from his mother's voice that she thought everything had gone well. I'll tell you what I think about the fact that you, without consulting me, arranged this viewing. Why was that necessary? And more importantly, who needed it? What makes you think you can decide for me? Did Stephen sound anxious and irritable? Son, I've had 1,000,000 conversations about how it's time for you to get married, but you do nothing. How long can I wait? Do you realize that if things continue like this, I won't have grandchildren at all? I don't want anyone to call me grandmother, but I'd love to see our family continue. Mom, what lineage are you talking about? Don't you understand? To start a family, you have to meet someone who makes your heart respond. You can't do things the way you've arranged them today. In your opinion, if a man is promising, then he's worthy of continuing the so-called lineage. Of course I do. What else could it be, son? You wanted a son. I will never let that happen. Who's gonna ask you? I'm almost 30 years old. I'm in a position to decide who I start a family with and when, much less have children. Stephen realized that a dialogue with his mother would not lead to anything good. Camille was in no mood for any kind of compromise, and this family needed it because she considered her son too infantile, unable to build a successful and rich life. Look, Stephen, two parents should have a perfect set of genes when it comes to procreation. You have to choose your mate responsibly. It will be difficult for you to get married now because, as you said yourself, you are almost 30 years old. Mother's tone has changed. It's as if she's become much calmer, thus misleading. I don't see you thanking me for having dinner tonight with such distinguished people of our town. You should be happy that I found you an educated prospective bride who is just over 20 years old. You know what that means? That she can give you a healthy baby. Every year it's harder for a woman to carry a fetus to term. The likelihood of genetic diseases increases. Have you thought about that? To be honest, Stephen was on the edge. He just didn't know what to do or how to end this pointless conversation. He knew that his mother could only back off on one condition, and that was that he had to agree with her. "Lady, you know, I hadn't really thought of that. You're probably right. Jenna's a really nice girl. Maybe I should consider her for a fiancé." He wasn't going to do that, of course. However, that answer completely satisfied Camille, who broke out into a blissful smile. On her face was the expression of a victor after a difficult and bloody battle. That was partly what this dialogue was. "I'm glad, sweetheart, that you have at least one bright thought in your head. Mommy knows what's best for you. You have to trust your mom. You won't regret this choice." Jesus, what choice is she talking about? I was just saying we could consider why she thinks the choice is already made. I've dragged myself to the bottom, and it's going to be extremely difficult to get out. These were the thoughts that were swirling around in Stephen's head. For now he remained silent and smiled, hoping that his mother would now go to get ready for bed. The young man thought that after all that had happened, he would fall asleep somewhere on the way to the bed. His body prayed, leaden eyelids heavier, his consciousness drifting off somewhere far away. However, it only turned out to be a defensive reaction to everything that had happened. Stephen's body was fighting back as best it could, giving him these signals. When he reached the bed, the young man came to the conclusion that Jenna was not the heroine of his novel. For a second, he felt sad that there was no girl in his life who could attract his attention. Despite the constant support of his father, Stephen would very much like to be loved, pitied, and supported when he comes home. Ideally, all of this should have been done by his mother, but she was preoccupied with other matters. At some point, Stephen realized that the image of Smith and Emily was popping up in his mind. Partly he felt sorry for her, because she wasn't doing what she would have wanted to do at the Institute. Her work in sketchbook was really good and deserved the attention of others. He was sure that Emily had some large-sized paintings in her arsenal, painted in colors rather than markers. When his thoughts turned from the matchmaking he had constructed to the new student, he calmed down. His body relaxed as much as possible. The brain cleared of heavy thoughts, and Stephen drifted into sleep. The next day, he had to go to work by 12 o'clock. So the young man managed to get a good night's sleep. Stephen woke up to the fact that the sun's rays began to break through the curtain. The sun was playing across his bed, getting rays in his eyes. Upon waking up, the young man noticed that his mother was not at home. This was good news for him, because he could spend the morning in complete peace, have breakfast, prepare for the upcoming lectures, check the students' work that he had to check yesterday. As he passed by the hallway, he noticed a couple of books that had been bought yesterday. He felt a little sad because he had dreamed to start reading them yesterday. But because of everything that had happened, it would have to wait until tonight. Unless Camille comes up with something else interesting. Stephen didn't make it to the bus stop on time, so he missed the bus. The intervals between transportation were long, so he had to call a cab. After selling the car for 15 minutes, he jumped into it, gave the driver the address of the university, and relaxed. There were surprisingly quite a lot of cars in the city today, even though it was a regular weekday with no holiday dates ahead. But still, the streets were filled with people, on whose faces a certain puzzled look appeared on Stephen's face when it was only 350 meters to the university. The cab in which he was traveling became stuck in traffic. Looking out of the window, the young man noticed a small accident that took up one lane of traffic. There was an adjuster standing on the road helping the traffic flow. He immediately realized that if he stayed in the car, he would be late for the lecture. So Stephen took cash out of his wallet, gave it to the driver, and said goodbye. Jumping out of the car, he looked at his watch. He was only 15 minutes away from the lecture he was supposed to be giving. It was only 15 minutes away. He shoved his briefcase under his arm and ran as fast as he could. On the way, he had to push people who were clearly not in a hurry to get to class. He even saw his students among them. He wanted to shout something encouraging. Maybe they would rush to the upcoming lecture after that. When Stephen turned towards the students, there was a violent collision. The young man managed to stay on his feet, but he noticed a girl lying on the pavement. Markers and sketches of drawings had fallen out of her bag and were lying on the pavement. Stephen immediately realized that it was Smith Emily. Everyone around them froze. At first, it was not clear whether the girl was conscious or not. The young teacher ran up to Emily. At that moment, she began to rise. Everyone exhaled, including Stephen. "Oh my God. Emily, you're all right. Can you tell me what hurts? Should I see a doctor or call an ambulance?" "Fuck the ambulance. By the time they get here, you might bleed to death. I'll take a cab to the hospital." "Stephen, calm down. What are you, like an elephant in a china shop?" "I can't say I'm all right. My knees are very sore." At that moment, Emily raised the hem of her dress a little. From there showed slender, graceful calves and knees that were shattered all over. A new colored blood started from them. Stephen's heart clenched. He was deeply ashamed. Without thinking, he gathered up all the markers and sketches, put them in Emily's bag, picked her up on his arm, and ran as fast as he could. On the way, he wondered where to take Emily. The girl at this moment was very much surprised, but could not utter a word. If it had been an ordinary person, and not her teacher, she would have started screaming, swearing, fighting. But how to behave in this situation that had developed, and she had no idea. Running up to the institute, Stephen, with Emily in his arms, climbed the stairs and turned in the direction of the infirmary. Its doors were closed. Stephen was angry. He could barely contain himself from swearing at the whole institute. "Emily, do you have a nail stick?" You could hear in his voice that he was holding back his rage. The girl was discouraged by such a question, as she couldn't understand why he needed it. Sawing nails didn't seem like a good time. "Yes, of course there is. Here you go." Stephen took Emily's wand and headed towards the castle. Fortunately, it turned out to be the easiest. It could be opened with a single movement of the hand. Entering the infirmary, Stephen rushed to find hydrogen peroxide, absorbent cotton, and bandages. Emily all this time stood dumbfounded by the sight, on the threshold of which she could not cross. When Stephen had everything he needed in his hands, he turned to the girl. "Why are you standing there? Come in. I'll treat your wounds." "Stephen, thank you, of course, but I could have waited for the nurse to come back. Or, at the very least, I can treat my own knees." Stephen's expression changed immediately. He didn't like to say the same thing twice. So he walked confidently toward the girl, took her in his arms, carried her into the medical center, and sat her on the couch. "Stephen, but really, I can handle it myself. Emily, please sit quietly. I'm responsible for what happened. I have to make it up to you somehow. If you think I have a beef with you, you're mistaken. You didn't deliberately run at me, I hope. If it had been intentional, I'd classify you as a peculiar person. But you're a decent man, a teacher. I realize you were just late, so you were in a hurry, not looking around. Please leave it alone. I'll work on my own wounds." Stephen looked sternly at the student, knelt down in front of her so that he could clearly see the injuries and help revive them as soon as possible. He knew how to administer first aid, so this did not cause him any difficulty. The whole process took no more than 5 minutes. When he was done, he raised his head to look at Emily. A wide smile was visible on her face. "Emily, do you feel better?" "To be honest, Stephen, not really." "Then why are you smiling?" "I just noticed that when you were treating my knee with hydrogen peroxide and then smearing it with green, you were blowing on my knee like it was the most precious thing in your life. Well, maybe not the most precious, but the most beautiful," Stephen thought, stretched into a smile. "Emily, it's just that I caused you a lot of trouble and pain. I tried very hard to make sure the procedure didn't cause you any discomfort. I hope I did the right thing, so that when you see me, you won't be reminded of this horrible incident." We exchanged a few words. The young people noticed that they were already 30 minutes late for their class. To keep the rumors from spreading around the school, Stephen sent Smith Emily first. When she left, the young man gathered all his things, left the office, and was about to close the door so that the nurse, who would soon be back in place, would not notice anything. I'm embarrassed to ask, what's going on here? Out of consternation, the nail squirrel he had taken from Emily fell out of Stephen's hands. Turning around, he noticed a stout adult woman in a white coat standing in front of him. It was obvious that she was a nurse. Stephen tried to think of a story that would make the woman feel comfortable with Emily's blood on the cuffs of his shirt. It was a good excuse to tell the nurse, a heart-wrenching situation that had his blood pressure rising. His nose was bleeding, and the staff at the nurse's station was not on site. By the look on the woman's face, you could tell right away that she didn't really believe the story. But she had little choice if she'd made a scandal of it. And the young man's bleeding was real. She could have been fired for leaving her workplace waving him off. She let him go. Stephen ran into the auditorium like a sunburned man. A look of surprise was written on the faces of the students. Occasional chuckles were heard around the auditorium. The young instructor was embarrassed for his students to witness this horror of a low embarrassment with Emily Smith. He had no choice but to pretend as if nothing had happened. In today's lecture, he was extremely serious. This was unusual for the students because Stephen was usually known around the institute for his good sense of humor, loyalty, and kindness. When the class was over, Stephen turned his back to the students and told them they were free to go. He was very embarrassed about what had happened before class. He did not turn around until the footsteps in the classroom stopped. When he was convinced that the students had left the room, he turned around, hoping that he would be getting ready now. To his surprise, standing in front of the faculty table was Smith, Emily with her big blue eyes. She looked at Stephen. Later, Emily, I am so embarrassed. You will please forgive me again for everything. Why did you stay in the auditorium? I can help you with something. Stephen, stop worrying. It's all behind you now, especially since you did a very professional job on my knee. At that moment, both Emily and Stephen smiled sincerely at each other, which made both of them uncomfortable. So anyway, what can I do for you? You know, I've never acted like this in my life. There's something I'd like to tell you more than anything. I don't know how you're gonna react to it, but still. Stephen's heart was pumping at a frantic pace. He didn't understand what was happening to him and why this student bothered him so much. Emily lowered her eyes to the floor, took a deep breath, and said, Stephen, would you like to invite me in for a cup of coffee? What? So it's just like that. What makes her think I'd even want to ask her out? I don't know if I would or not. Who am I kidding? Emily, this is very sudden. And yet I have to ask you if it bothers you that you're a student and I'm a teacher. I'm almost 10 years older than you. Oh no, it doesn't bother me at all. I just feel like you and I are soulmates. I'd like to get to know you as well as I can. I don't insist that we must have a relationship, just a chat. After these words, Emily's appearance was so innocent that Stephen could not refuse her. To tell the truth, he himself would like to get to know his student better. Even though the rules of the university contradicted it, Stephen looked at the girl with a bewildered look and at some point realized that an idiotic smile was shining on his face. Quickly switching from Emily to his notes, he took 3 deep breaths, which, according to psychological practice, promised to bring calmness. To be honest, this is very unexpected, I'll admit to you. I do feel, as you do, that we have much in common. So I'd love to invite you in for a cup of coffee or tea, whichever you prefer. But here's the thing. I don't get off until 7:00 p.m. every day. That's not a problem. Then I suggest we meet at 8:00 at the entrance to the city park. There's a good coffee shop nearby. The coffee's really good, and so are the desserts. It's great. I really like desserts. I look forward to seeing you again. Bye. After saying that, the girl turned around and left, with a quick limp. Stephen, it was very painful to look at her. He kept blaming himself for what he had done. In his mind, it seemed as if he had agreed to this meeting only because he was the one responsible for her broken knees. He wanted to do as many nice things for this girl as possible that would help make up for his guilt. Toward the end of the workday, the young man sat in the department and checked the students' papers. There was no one around. In his head, there were some rambling thoughts that distracted him from his work. Because of this, he had to check the control papers several times to find mistakes that were not detected at the first check. This feeling was new to him. His heart was failing him too. No, it wasn't aching. It was pounding at a frantic pace. It seemed to him that if anyone else were in the office, he would hear his heartbeat, which sounded like a drum solo in his head. He put his left hand to his chest. It seemed to him that it would make things better. Stephen was confused. Pens and pencils were falling out of his hands. Maybe I have poems by Accord and I never knew. I should ask for an excuse to go to the dean's office and make a doctor's appointment. His hand was already reaching for the work first aid kit to take a Valadol or Corvalol. Just in time, he remembered he had a date with Emily. What date? Am I crazy? It's just a meeting. We're just gonna talk, have coffee, and I have to pay for it. I have to pay for her, but she might see it as a date. Stephen realized that he couldn't cope with the excitement and this new feeling, so he decided to quit. After all, he'd have time to check the tests tomorrow morning. It was early 8 o'clock on the clock. Time to move out. Stephen collected all the student work, his notes and briefcase, listed in front of the mirror and went to the exit. In the corridor met the dean, who detained him. Their conversation about upcoming competitions and grants took over 20 minutes. Because of this, Stephen was catastrophically late for his meeting with Emily. The young man hailed a cab, which arrived 5 minutes later. Jumping into the car, he gave the driver the address and leaned back in the back seat. The closer he drove to the city park, the more his heartbeat increased. Stephen absent-mindedly considered the possibility that he was really sick. When he got out of the car, Emily was already waiting for him near the entrance to the park. With each step, he found it harder to breathe. It was getting harder. His heart was pounding harder and harder. At some point, his throat lumped up, and he couldn't even say hello to the girl. He had to react quickly. So instead of the usual greeting, he extended his right hand to the girl, and with his left hand he pretended to take off his hat. This made Emily laugh a lot. As she started up in a golden laugh, Stephen noticed that he was relieved. Stephen and Emily headed deeper into the park along the center avenue. For the first few minutes, they walked in complete silence, which made them both feel awkward. At some point, the girl began to talk about her hobbies. Stephen was very pleased with the fact that she liked to read books. As it turned out, young people have the same tastes. They almost simultaneously read all the novelties that appear in the bookstore. In addition, Emily told how she began to engage in drawing. Stephen did not hear anything original, but this did not prevent him from listening to the girl with interest since childhood. Emily liked to draw with pencils, colors with felt-tip pens. Sometimes there was not even enough paper for all her masterpieces, which she produced in a day. That's why the little girl used as a canvas everything she could get her hands on: documents, curtains, mirrors, windows, and even bed linen. Emily told her life stories with such a childlike sincerity, which instantly allowed her to draw the young teacher to her. All the while, a smile never left Stephen's face. It had been a long time since he had felt so good. One could even say that he was happy, really happy. He felt as if he had not lived before, but existed. He couldn't get out of his head why he was attracted to this girl. It could not be said that she was some kind of model appearance. After all, according to the stories of friends, this is what they pay attention to when meeting the opposite sex. Stephen was pleased to listen to Emily. He did not want to interrupt her. The last thing he wanted was for this evening to end. The young man realized that sooner or later he would have to talk and tell something about himself, and she was waiting for that. But he dared not interrupt Emily and tell her about his life. And what did he have to tell about how he lived with his mother in a 3-room apartment in the center of the city? how his mother wouldn't let him take a step without her permission. He was ashamed. He didn't want Emily to get the impression that he was a mama's boy. He wasn't. He tried to fight the matriarchy in the house, but he wasn't very good at it. And instead of the sweet feeling of victory after an argument with his mother, he constantly felt guilty. Especially when Camille clutched at her heart and screamed that Stephen was trying to drive her to her grave. God, I don't even have anything to say about my life. After 2 o'clock, it started to get colder outside, so the young people decided to stop by the coffee shop Stephen had talked about during the day. They were both surprised that their orders were the same, Cocoa and Napoleon. Were you peeking at my order? Emily shrieked sharply, theatrically putting her hands at her sides. No, you were watching me, young lady, replied Stephen, laughing. Laughing, Stephen replied. I'm not. Where did you find a young lady? I'm a grown-up, independent, and self-sufficient woman. Of course, my father didn't want me to move so far away from my parents' home. It was my choice. I've been living in your city for 3 years, and I've never asked my parents for money. I make my own living. It's not much, but I'm sure that in the future my work will be appreciated, and I'll be able to live well. Okay, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. Don't mind me. Stephen, I've noticed that the 2.5 hours we spend together, I'm the only one talking. Can you please tell me something about yourself? Stephen agreed. But did he have a choice? The young man said that since childhood he had been drawn to knowledge, that his father had accustomed him to books, and now he could not spend a single evening without reading. He did not talk about the fact that everything was not smooth in his family. Emily didn't need to know that Stephen's parents were divorced and his mother couldn't stand his father. And she certainly didn't need to learn that her mother's main job, in her opinion, was to arrange for her son's matchmaking and marriage. The young teacher was quickly going over in her head the topics on which to talk. When there were pauses, Emily tried to ask leading questions on topics of interest to her. It was by chance that she learned that Stephen had decided to follow in his father's footsteps. It turned out that Christopher was known even in the city where the girl came from. She was pleasantly surprised, as she had read in the newspaper's interviews with the outstanding engineer. She especially liked Christopher's articles on various subjects. Stephen was very much surprised that Emily was aware of who his father was. It turned out that she even knew that Christopher and Camille were divorced. Stephen's dad had mentioned it in passing in some interview. At some point, the young teacher felt an irresistible urge to take the girl's hand, but he couldn't afford it, as they had to observe the elementary subordination. To be honest, he was a little shaken at the thought that they might be seen by students or professors from the institute. If they thought something untoward was going on, Stephen would lose his job. It was obvious to Emily that she was very eager to touch the young man. She tried to touch him in every possible way, supposedly by accident. In the coffee shop, the young people spent another hour and a half. It was already about 23 o'clock on the clock. Stephen said that the time had passed catastrophically unnoticed and suggested Emily to go away. Yes, you're probably right. But Stephen, don't you know it's etiquette for a young man to walk a girl home? What? Oh yes, but you see, Emily, it's only permissible if there are romantic feelings between a man and a woman. And you don't. At that moment, Stephen was lost. Never before in his life had a girl behaved so openly in his presence. Where had he ever seen a woman declare all her desires at the first meeting? He didn't know what to do in this situation. He wanted very much to walk Emily home, but this prim pedantry prevented him from agreeing to this adventure. Where do you live? It's not far. Come along. To his surprise, the young man obeyed Emily. When they left the park, they turned into Dark Lane. The girl reached timidly with her fingers for Stephen's hand. To say that he was discouraged was like saying nothing. His hand remained unmoved while Emily's fingers gently stroked his. At the same time, they did not speak, walked in silence. Words were unnecessary here. Emily's heart was beating in a frantic rhythm. She had never acted so unbridled in her life. She felt as if she were scaring the young teacher away from her, but she didn't want that. She wanted to get closer to him. A wave of passion and attraction was washing over her. She became a hostage to her heart. Emily was willing to do anything to make Stephen respond to her actions. What scared her most in life was rejection. Rejection of her. The girl, like Stephen, had never been in a serious relationship. It seemed to her, too, that the men around her thought more of their animal instincts. Intimacy with the opposite sex was intimidating. But things were different with this guy. Stephen was still walking the same way, frozen. Fear. Only fear kept him from responding to Emily's actions. It was hard for him to explain where the feeling came from and what exactly he was afraid of. It could have been misunderstanding from the mother of the people around him, coworkers and students. Yes, it could have been judgment from the outside that he would not want to experience. Meanwhile, Emily's actions became more confident. She went the bank. The girl decided that she had nothing to lose, and it was now that everything should be decided. If the young and attractive teacher did not respond to her already far from timid actions, she would let him go. It was clear from the student's fingers what she wanted. Stephen stopped squeezing her hand, whereupon his fingers tangled with Emily's slender, neat fingers. This was the moment when the young people realized that they cared about each other. "Stephen, are you comfortable?" "Yes, but I'm not." "Emily, why not?" "I think our atmosphere would be more favorable if we switched to you." "I don't know. Do you think it's appropriate? After all, we're faculty." "Student." "Yes, it is. But we're not in lecture. We're not in counseling. We're actually on a date. I thought we were meeting to get to know each other." "We are. But we originally met because we have some warm feelings for each other that shouldn't be between a teacher and a student." Stephen was lying to himself when he talked about not feeling anything for Emily. His heart and body spoke of something else. This was the only girl he was comfortable with, and he had decided to risk his relationship with his mother, work in science, and teaching. At that very moment, he didn't care about anything but this young and awe-inspiring creature holding his hand. No longer did the young people address each other anew. Their hands clasped each other more tightly, and when Stephen took Emily home, he did not want to let her go. Emily felt the same way, and she wanted very much to invite Stephen to her house. But the fear that the young man would misunderstand her took over. When they reached the entrance, they stopped. Emily, without letting go of his hand, turned to the boy. For several minutes they stared into each other's eyes. It was hard to tell what they saw in them. It's not for nothing they say that the eyes are the mirror of the soul. Stephen still stood in confusion. He didn't know what to do next. They should have said goodbye a long time ago, gone their separate ways. But the girl and the man looked into each other's eyes and held hands without a break. At some point, Emily realized that she had to act first. She stood on her tiptoes a little and reached for Stephen's face. At that moment, his brain shut down. He reflexively reached up, and their lips met. At first, it was a gentle, childlike kiss, but with each passing second, the passion increased, and their lips greedily embraced each other. Tums unapologetically entered another space, exploring the terrain. When the kiss ended, Stephen said it was getting late. He hugged Emily goodbye, and they parted. The young man lived not far from the student. On the way home, he was in high spirits. Had Stephen met someone he was ready to go on with? How can it be that two people with the same interests, views on life met only now? Let's be honest, it wasn't the best of circumstances. But Stephen waved goodbye to everything, just to feel happy for a moment. As he approached the entrance, he noticed a girl standing under the visor. It was a strange phenomenon, as it was already approaching 0 o'clock. As he took a few more steps closer, he saw Jenna standing near the door. "Jenna, hello. What are you doing here?" "Oh, Stephen, you don't know how long I've been waiting here for you. I was in the neighborhood. I thought I'd come to visit, but there was no one home, so I thought I'd wait for you here." The young man was very much surprised. If someone passes by the house and decides to visit, and there is no one there, he just turns around and leaves. But why did she stay here? Why is she waiting for him? "How long have you been waiting for me?" "You know, I thought it hadn't been more than half an hour, but it's been almost 2 o'clock. 200 waiting. You really must have something going on. No, I just really wanted to see you. I'm honored. Thank you. Stephen felt uncomfortable. He realized he liked Jenna, but he didn't feel the same way. So are we just gonna stand here like this? You will. Jenna, it's too late. I have to check the students' test papers. I promised I'd announce their results tomorrow. Perhaps you should go home. I'm sorry you waited so long for me. Stephen, but I think they won't be offended if you don't announce the grades. If you tell them that you spent that time with a pretty girl you like, they'll understand your position and take it all in stride. Yeah, except I'd be lying. What do you mean? Jenna, I'm sorry. You're a very nice girl, aren't you? But under the circumstances, if you and I had met without the help of our parents, maybe something would have happened between us. But under these circumstances, there can't be any relationship between us. I can't say I don't like you. I like you, but as a friend. A friend is just a friend. Think about it. We can have a beautiful family. We're not the last people in this town. We're very promising. If we get married, we'll go abroad together, and they'll take good engineers. Jenna, wait, we haven't even been on a date yet. That's unnecessary. We're modern people living in the 21st century. No, I'm sorry. I just want to get this conversation over with as soon as possible. If my mom promised you something, you can have it. Don't bring me into this. I'm going home now. You call a cab and leave. Please don't ever come here again. After these words, Stephen turned away and entered the entrance, going up to his floor. His thoughts stayed in his head. He had never been so hard on other people before. Always went along to get along, but not this time. And he realized why things were happening this way. It's Emily's fault, or rather, it was her fault for what she had done to his heart and head. Entering the apartment, Stephen was surprised. The TV was on and his mom was lying on the couch. Mom, hi, I'm home. Oh, Stephen, I've been waiting for you for so long. Where have you been? Oh, wait, let me guess. You were with Jenna. How was the date? I don't know who Jenna is. What date? You weren't with her. Where were you? Did you even see the time? You don't care if your mom's at home worrying. You were worried sick when you thought I was with Jenna. That's why you were so excited to see me. Oh, I see. I guess Jenna didn't wait for you. How do you know she waited for me? Someone rang the doorbell while you were out. I went over, looked through the peephole, saw Jenna there. To be honest, at first I didn't want to open the door because I wasn't at my best. But the girl was very persistent. Eventually, I let her into the apartment, and we talked. She said she really wanted to see you, and that she liked you. To be honest, I was really excited, because, as I said before, this is a very good match for your future wife. Mom, let's just leave it at that. What happened next? Well, I told her you were due back from school soon. I suggested that she wait for you downstairs. I thought when you saw her, you'd be pleased. But apparently I miscalculated. Yes, I sent her away and asked her never to come here again. What? How dare you? Do you realize whose daughter she is? She'll never forgive you after that. Stephen, who needs you at your age? Whoever needs you, needs you. I don't get it. With your eyebrows together, Camille asked. Can I ask you more about that? Stephen decided to tell his mom the truth. Maybe then she would leave him alone. The young man told Camille that a girl had come into his life. They have many common interests and feel an irresistible attraction to each other. During the heightened narrative, Camille's face was constantly changing. Such colorful emotions that changed every minute he had never seen before. He did not know how his mother would react to all this. He didn't feel like fighting. However, the feeling of dread that lodged in his chest said otherwise. His stomach grumbled as if he hadn't eaten in 3 days. After listening to Stephen, Camille threw her hands up in the air and threw a real tantrum. It had to be admitted that she had gotten into the wrong school at the wrong time. She should definitely have tried her luck in the acting department. Camille was the person for whom Oscar cried, And she cried. She screamed. She was silent. She pretended to gasp. She was trying to get it into Stephen's head that this was his biggest mistake in life. After all he had done, he would not be forgiven by the young girl and her parents. The mother was trying to prove to her son that you can't be so irresponsible with life. Do you understand? I can see it in your eyes. Stephen, a few years ago, you chose your profession responsibly. You thought through all your options. Your specialty is one of the most promising. Not as promising as a programmer, of course, but still you chose it yourself. I'm sure you were guided not by your heart, but by your brain. You should do the same with choosing a future wife. What are you doing, son? You chased away such a beautiful girl and instead walks with some frame who came from a neighboring town. Don't you realize she's trying to get a job here on your dime? At our expense. Stephen's got his wits about him. Even though Stephen hadn't taken his mother's words seriously for a long time, for some reason he thought about what she had said now. Because right now, Camille could be right. He didn't know anything about Emily. Why was she so keenly interested in a young teacher? Yes, she probably just wants to find a free place to live, earn an automatic in electrical engineering. No, this is a pure and sincere person. She can't do that. Or can she? The scandal went on for no more than another 10 minutes. At some point, Stephen realized that he had reached an impasse. He needed to think it over, to make the right decision. But he didn't know who to ask. What exactly would be considered the right decision? In his head, the thoughts scattered smoothly in different directions formed a void. Silence. Stephen fell asleep. The next day, when Stephen woke up, he found that his throat was sore. On top of that, his temperature was elevated to 38.5. His whole body ached as if he had been ponderously beaten all night. One thing was clear. He would not be going to work today. At first he was upset because he wouldn't be seeing Emily. Then he decided that it was a good opportunity to think things over properly and make the right decision. He called the department chair, alerted the dean, and made an appointment with the doctor. Stephen realized that the doctor would definitely give him a sick leave, which would last at least 10 days. Yes, that would be enough time. Camille was not at home. She had gone somewhere early in the morning, probably to the market for fresh vegetables. He went to the pharmacy to buy some medicine. It was not far from his house, literally 30 meters away. When Stephen was on his way to the entrance, he looked up and saw Emily near the steps. He wasn't surprised. He just didn't have the energy for it. He didn't understand why the women were following him. Why had Emily come here? The girl stood in a light floral dress just above the knee. On her shoulder was a pink bag, and in her hands a branded bag from the store, in which oranges were visible. Stephen, hi. How are you? I was really freaked out today when Jack showed up for steam instead of you. I thought something serious had happened. I ran to the department, but the secretary said you were ill. I hope it's nothing serious. Hello, Emily. Well, I don't know how serious it is, but I have a sore throat. It's a lousy condition, of course. Why did you come here? What do you mean? To check on you, to give you an orange so you can get vitamins and get well soon. I missed you. At that moment, the girl raised her eyes to Stephen a few times, playfully clapped her eyelashes, and pouted her lips. Emily, you forgive me, but what are you apologizing for again? I really don't have the energy. I don't know what happened yesterday. I've never been through anything like this before in my life, so I need time to think. Think about what? Emily asked in surprise. I'd like to take charge of yesterday's situation. Why did that happen? Why do I have these feelings for you? Why are you so open with me? Why are you so assertive after all? These are the kind of questions that are sitting in my head right now. You know, there must be a catch, but I can't see it. You attract me like a magnet. I've never had that in my life. I'll tell you the truth. I'd like to hold your hands for the rest of my life and never let go. It's like you've been stealing from me. If we lived 300 years ago, I'd really think you were engaging in hostile behavior. What are you talking about? Tears began to well up in Emily's eyes. She could no longer keep a steady, calm voice. She was shaking. What fight? I opened up to you. I gave you the key to my heart. Did you use it? Entered the hearts. Now you want to break it. No, Emily, I'm just not familiar with this whole thing. I'm scared, to be honest. Stephen wouldn't tell the girl that her mother was against their relationship. He didn't think it was information that deserved her attention. They looked at each other in silence for a few minutes. Stephen was pained to see the tears in Emily's eyes. He stretched his arms forward and spread them slightly apart, letting the girl know that he was ready to hug her. She instantly responded to his call, snuggled against his chest, and catted his neck with her arms. It so happened that Emily had received a stab in the heart in 15 minutes, and then a fit of tenderness and revelation from Stephen. She knew what he was talking about. After all, she had experienced the same thing. Despite this, she truly believed that the feeling that was spilling inside of her was the truest love. This little conversation with Emily helped Stephen forget the tantrum his mother had thrown. There was no going back to that conversation. Apparently, she was confident that her son had listened to her. The young man was on sick leave for 10 days. His mom was with him only in the evenings. During the day, Stephen was visited by Emily, who told him news from the Institute local gossip and also shared impressions of the lectures that Jack held. One of the days, Camille was at work. Emily, as always, after studying, approached the entrance of Stephen. The young man was waiting for her at the same time every day. They didn't need to call each other. They felt each other. Seeing a familiar silhouette approaching in the window, Stephen ran out of the apartment, ran up the stairs, came out of the entrance exactly at the moment when Emily was 3 meters away from him. The girl joyfully pounced on Stephen, kissed his cheeks, eyes, nose, smoothly moving to his lips. While Stephen was on sick leave, he didn't want them to kiss, afraid of infecting Emily. But she didn't care. She confirmed that contagion doesn't stick to advance. Afterwards, she laughed and pounced on his lips as if she hadn't seen them in forever. During the passionate kiss, the young people did not notice anything around them. The gray cityscape turned into the natural world, always becomes much brighter when a loved one is near us. Yes, it was the beloved Stephen who confessed his feelings to Emily on the 3rd day of the hospital stay. This fact did not shock her. She, of course, reciprocated his feelings. Even though they had only known each other for a week, both of them were sure that this love was for life, and they wanted to get married as soon as possible. Emily was already prepared for the fact that the proposal would be made not by Stephen to her, but by her to him. But still, she was waiting for a man to take that step. Camille spent a lot of time at work, tried to lead a social life, but that day she was ashamed of the fact that at home there is a sick son who needs her care, and she instead has fun with girlfriends. After quickly saying goodbye, the woman gathered all her things. She ran to the store to buy groceries to prepare a delicious dinner. She wanted to give her son a little feast. She hurried home with all her legs, and when she wrapped up in her yard, she saw that under the driveway young people hugging, kissing. Wow, they couldn't find any other place. How are people supposed to walk? She did not want to scandalize, as she was in a good mood and decided to make a simple remark. Guys, why are you standing here in broad daylight in full view of everyone? Camille said without raising her eyes and ran into the entrance. Mom, meet Emily. Camille was dumbfounded. She thought she had imagined it. Standing there, afraid to turn around, she couldn't believe it. After all, her son was sick, should be lying in bed waiting for her. Mom, without letting go of Emily's embrace, repeated Stephen. Why aren't you in bed? Stephen released his lover from his embrace, walked up to his mother, took her by the elbow, and took her aside. I don't understand. What kind of concerts are these? What do you allow yourself? I'm introducing you to a dear person, and you act like she's not even there. How am I supposed to act? Should I welcome her with open arms? Who is she? She's nobody. Look at the way the girl looks. Would an intelligent person wear such a vulgar dress? And what's that on her head? It's horrible. Where did you find her? Did you pick her up like a slit in a garbage dump?" After these words, Stephen was overcome by a wave of rage. No one dare speak of his favorite person in such a tone. His hand twitched, barely missed. The young man came to his senses. Raising a hand on his mother is not allowed, and in general on anyone. Stephen turned around and walked towards Emily. His face had never looked so ugly with anger. Emily was frightened. Stepping up close, Stephen grabbed the girl's arm so that she shrieked a little. The reaction was one of fear and pain. His hand clenched tighter. The guy didn't see anyone or anything around him. Only when Emily started to cry did he abruptly let her go. I'm sorry, honey. I didn't mean to." The girl broke into sobs, covering her face with her hands. No one had ever treated her like this before. She didn't understand why it had happened. After all, she had done nothing wrong. Tears were flowing not only because Stephen had grabbed her and hurt her, but also because of Camille's reaction. "Honey, please don't cry. I'm sorry I hurt you. I didn't know what I was doing. She just made me angry," Stephen said, pointing in the direction where his mother was standing. "Why is she angry without stopping to cry?" asked Emily. "I don't know. She doesn't need an excuse to turn into Miguel." Stephen cradled Emily, kissed the top of her head. There was a lump in my throat again, this guilt that wouldn't let up. Her heartbeat quickened with anxiety. Nausea kicked in. The young man was determined. "Sweetheart, it's going to be all right. I'll do everything I can to make us happy. We just have to wait a little longer. Do you believe me?" "I do, darling. I do." The lovers stayed together for about another hour. After that, Stephen saw the girl off and went home to talk to his mom and start forging his own happiness. God, I really am a mama's boy. I'm almost 30 years old, and I still haven't learned to live on my own, to make my own decisions. I have to figure out something to make my girl happy, to make me happy. After all, how to talk to her mother. I have no idea what language I can use to convey my thoughts to her. Doesn't she want her son to be happy? Every mother wants that. She just doesn't understand me because we haven't talked enough. I just need to spend a nice evening with her. Stephen thought that today he could settle the relationship with his mother, which had not been formed for many years, to immediately flush her zamomu. So to speak, the young man on the way home stopped by the flower store. On the shelves of the refrigerator were dozens of vases with a variety of flowers. But Camille's most favorite plants were chrysanthemums. There was no preference of any kind for the color. At first, Stephen wanted to collect all varieties of these flowers in a bouquet, but thought that it would look like something defiant. Mom's nervous system was already upset. Together with the salesman, they chose chrysanthemums in bed colors. The bouquet was chic and expensive, but Stephen spared no expense. It was for his beloved mom. To be more precise, it's for his carefree future. The bouquet was just under a meter in diameter. When Stephen saw it, he thought he couldn't carry it home on his own. But it was necessary to walk less than 500 meters. Entering the entrance, the young man stopped and leaned against the wall. His arms were tired, his back grimaced. There was not much left to do. Gathering all the strength in a heap, Stephen made one last dash. The door to the apartment was locked. It was impossible to hold the keys. It was impossible to reach, as he held the bouquet with both hands. I had to knock. The choice fell on his foot, gently hitting the door a few times. Stephen froze in anticipation of footsteps not being heard. Tried again. Silence. With all his might, hitting the door, he heard quick footsteps. "What on earth is going on?" mumbled Camille as he ran to the door and turned the lock. "Why are you banging like that? Are you out of your mind?" Oops, when the door opened, she saw a huge bouquet of her favorite flowers. "What's that? Who is it?" Blurry smiles, asked the woman. "It's for you, Mom. I tried and picked the best flowers for you. We had an unpleasant conversation this afternoon. You were in a bad mood. I thought I'd make it better for you. Did it work?" I'm glad you came to your senses and admitted you were wrong. Mom, that's not what I meant. Why was I wrong? Let's go into the kitchen and have some tea. Put the flowers in the vase. Camille grabbed the bouquet and went into the hall with it. There among the variety of you tried to choose the one in which the bouquet would look more advantageous. Meanwhile, Sturhenna's head was busy thinking about how to convince his mother to leave him alone. It seemed impossible, but he wasn't going to give up. Dialogues were turning in his head, which by all the rules of life would never happen. Even if you think of many variants of the event, it will still turn out something you did not count on. Oh, son, that's good. You made your mom happy, of course. Thank you so much. My favorite colors and shades are so beautiful. After all, a mother is never wrong. I always said you had good taste. It's just that after I saw your mom, I started to doubt you. But I figured it was just a temporary blur. Mom, stop calling love a blur. What love? What do you know about love? You're almost 30 years old, but you've never had a girlfriend. How do you know? Oh, I'm sorry. Camille shrieked and threw her hands up in the air. Did you sit in your room all day or did you disappear to the institute? And where did you hide it if you had it under your desk, under your bed? Okay, everybody. Let's stop this pointless conversation. I wanted to talk to you about my relationship with Emily. Oh my God, what relationship with Emily? Please, it's just a casual attraction. Son, now, after a couple nights together, you'll forget her as the most interesting book you have on your bottom shelf, floor-level shelves. You won't even lose dust in there. That's how it's gonna be with this sucker. No, you listen to me, you know, I've never felt what I'm feeling right now in my life. No girl has ever captured my attention and captured my mind and my heart. You see, she and I are soulmates. We have a lot in common. A love of art, books, animals. Can you understand what I'm saying? I'm asking you to stop following my every move and let me start living on my own. If you are afraid that I don't make mistakes, then don't worry. They will be my mistakes that I will learn from. You've hardly lived the life your grandmother told you to live. As far as I remember from your childhood, you were always willful, and never in your life did you do as your grandmother told you. You did the opposite. Even when you knew it wouldn't end well, you did it out of spite. Just think about the time I was at my grandmother's house this weekend. And when I met you, she said I was probably allergic to citrus fruits. You screamed that it wasn't true. And the rash that formed on me is common. That same evening, you fed me oranges. And 2 o'clock later, I was in the hospital with a pharmacy receipt. That's not normal. But you thought you did the right thing, because you had to see if Granny was right or not. Camille listened and stared intently into Stephen's eyes. She couldn't believe that her son remembered this moment in his life, because he was only 4 years old. And after being discharged from the hospital, no one ever brought up the situation. And even now, my mom didn't feel guilty. It was a good thing after all. What else does he need? What kind of independence can we talk about if Stephen did not live a day without his mom? He even refused to go to camps because he was afraid of a long separation from his mother. Stephen continued his monologue, trying to make many arguments for the fact that he was ready to get off the tit and go into life without his mom. Camille realized that the son was serious. The usual methods of influencing him would not work. There was no point in throwing another tantrum. A more cunning plan could have been devised. Stephen was more loyal to his mother when she spoke in a calm and affirmative tone. But even that was not enough now. If she kept talking about her son's failure as an independent man, he would become hysterical, and God forbid, he would get angry and leave home. Such a turn of events she did not survive. Having listened to her son to the end, the mother remained silent for a few minutes, trying to digest what he was trying to convey to her. Stephen, you're probably right. What's right? You're a grown man who needs to get out of your parents' house and start building your life brick by brick. Stephen was stunned. He was preparing for the fact that his mother will seize another scandal, will argue that he cannot live without her, and that he needed a wife. But to say that Camille would agree with her son's words, no one could expect that. He looked at her out of the corner of his eye, groped his hand several times to make sure it wasn't a dream. The young man rushed from his seat, hugging his mother. The woman answered him gently, hugging and stroking her son. "Only I ask you for one thing. Mother, I will try to do what you ask. There is nothing terrifying in my request. You see, I'm used to you always being at home, putting up with the enormous amount of books that keeps increasing. I can't imagine coming home from work tomorrow, and the house will be empty, with neither you nor your things in it. I wouldn't survive that. All I ask is that you don't rush into moving. Stay with me a little longer." This mother's request was out of Stephen's plans. He was really going to look for a nice apartment tonight, among the ones for rent. He wanted to drive around in the morning, see what was available. Then tonight he'd pack up his things and move in. After that, he'd like to go after Emily and ask her to move in with him. But Mom was partly right about something. She carried him for 9 months under her heart for 29 years, raising him, feeding him, caring for him. If he did that, her feelings would probably be comparable to what women feel when they lose their children. "Okay, Mom, I'll do what you're asking me to do. I just ask that this transition not take months. The most I can offer you is a few weeks. I'm fine with that." "Son, thank you." Although Camille agreed with everything that had been said, she had no intention of stopping. It was early in the morning when Stephen was asleep. She took his phone, found his lover's phone number, wrote it down in her notebook. Toward lunchtime, she decided to call. "Hello." She heard a fragile female voice on the other end of the line. "Smith. Emily." "Yes. Hi, this is Camille, Stephen's mom. I'd like to meet you today." "Something's happened to Stephen." The girl asked me worriedly. "No, he's sleeping fine. He probably had a fever last night, couldn't sleep. And if he had followed the bed rest that the doctor said, he would have recovered by now." "Oh well, that's not what I'm talking about. When can you honor me with your presence? I'm out of class in half an hour. We can meet outside the institute. There's a coffee shop with great coffee." "Oh, that's great. I'll be there in 5 minutes." When Emily finished talking, I noticed that she was feeling a little heavy. The feeling of unease was growing by the second. After what Camille had done in the yard yesterday, the girl could not expect her to be kind. What if Stephen had talked to her and the woman had decided to get to know her better to understand her son's choice? Yeah, I guess she did. It's weird, but why am I so excited? Although it can be considered the first acquaintance with the future mother-in-law, no daughter-in-law has ever been completely calm before this event. I guess it's a normal feeling. Emily returned to the classroom, where the class was held, began to absorb what was written on the teachers' websites. Thoughts did not leave her head. It was impossible to concentrate. No matter how hard the girl tried to concentrate, everything was in vain. She resigned herself to her condition and just stared at the clock, waiting for the end of the class. After the bell rang, the instructor dismissed the students. Emily leisurely headed towards the exit. She did not want to hurry, because the feeling of anxiety had already grown to universal proportions. The way to the cafe, which was located in the park, 200 meters from the institute, took forever. There she saw the familiar silhouette of a middle-aged lady. Yes, it was her. Maybe it's not too late to cancel. If I go now and leave before she saw me, it could be said that I was detained after the lecture. While Emily was turning an escape plan in her head, Camille turned around and saw her. The girl stood there like a dumbfounded and didn't understand what she should do, where to run to. Maybe she hadn't noticed her yet. The woman gracefully raised her hand and waved everything. There were no more options. If she ran away now, it would mean she would completely ruin her relationship with her lover's mom. Emily shifted with difficulty. Her legs were leaden. Every step was like torture. When the girl came close, it felt as if she was about to faint. "Hello, Emily." "Hello, Camille." Stammering, the girl replied. "Let's go to the cafe." They were both silent until they sat down at a table. After ordering, The woman spoke. Emily, you know, I'm very glad that my son has you. I honestly thought he was more interested in the book world than the real world. I don't know what's so special about you, but I'm happy he's starting to live. But all people are unique and beautiful in their own way. Some people can't understand another person's choices. Yeah, you're right. You must be able to do something my son never dreamed of before, Camille said with a wry smile. Emily felt uncomfortable. How dare this woman say such things to her? She was clearly alluding to sex and everything that went with it. The snag was that the young people had nothing going on yet. Yes, that's what happens in the modern world when a woman doesn't jump on a man in the first hour of meeting him. It was more than that. Camille, I'm sorry, but it's indecent to talk about such things. And if it bothers you that much, yes, I care a great deal. Stephen's mother started to raise her voice. There was nothing going on between me and Stephen yet. Yeah, but all the better. What do you mean? That he won't be in so much pain after the breakup. You see, my dear, if there's been intimacy between young people, there's a special bond between them. I'm sorry, after what breakup? What are you talking about? That's what I called you here to talk to you about. Honey, you're not our kind of girl. I figured you out when I first heard about you, and when I saw you, all my fears were confirmed. Stephen is the son of a great, not afraid of this word, engineer known not only in Russia, but in many countries of the world. He's an intelligent boy, you know. And now look at yourself. At that moment, Emily turned her head to the right. There on the wall was a mirror. She looked at her reflection, saw exactly what she had seen an hour and a half ago. Maybe her mascara was running. I don't think so. Camille, I look at myself in the mirror 100 times a day. I don't see any signs of ugliness, sty, or inferiority. Appearance. I'm wearing a flowered dress on my head. What are you? A milkmaid? I guess I'm guessing. Before you went to college, by some miracle you ate cows in your village. No, I came from a regional town, Emily replied dryly. What, you didn't go to school in the region? You decided to come to a small town. What is that nonsense? Yes, I did. I wanted to get out of my parents' house, so I came here. Are you even telling the truth? I'm telling the truth. Why would I open up to someone I don't know very well? Plus, I'm happy with the way I look, just like your son. Oh, let's drop it. You're the one who's stupid. I'll continue, if you don't mind. You see, Stephen was only interested in you until he took you to bed. I'm sure that after he's had a few times of getting what he dreams of, all his made-up feelings, and vaporized, he won't need you. No one knows a child as well as his mother who has lived under the same roof with him all his life. Emily, I understand why you chose my son. He deserves the attention of the best women. Not that you're on that list, but still. Emily sat there, not moving. The coffee had gone cold. She couldn't get a word in edgewise. She did not understand how from the mouth of such a well-mannered woman, at first glance, could fly such disgusting words that she allowed herself. Why had she descended almost to direct insults? These questions lingered in her mind. She had no idea what was going on right now. Meanwhile, Camille continued her tirade. I'm sorry your plan didn't work out, but I must confess that Stephen already has a fiancée. But he's been very upset with her because of you. Well, I'm willing to bend at the knees to beg her forgiveness. His future is firmly entwined with the kitten, not you. Just suck it up and let him go. Just disappear. I realize that's impossible because he's your teacher. But think of something. I hope the villagers are logical and you'll make the right decision. After these words, Camille elegantly got up from the table, carefully threw her coat on her shoulders and left. Emily sat there, hardly breathing. What was that? And what am I supposed to do after that? The girl felt as if she had been doused in mud from head to toe. What is there to say? According to Stephen's mother, she was the dirt that could not be washed away. The woman considered her son's relationship with the girl as something criminal and ugly. I think it would stigmatize the boy for the rest of his life. Emily realized one thing: Stephen had a strong bond with his mother. Tears sprang from her eyes, and wouldn't stop flowing. She didn't understand why the woman didn't accept her. She didn't even ask who her father and mother were, nor did she inquire about her reason for moving to the small town. As much as it hurt Emily, she had to make a difficult decision. The next day, Stephen woke up early in the morning, went to the bread store to get a loaf to please herself and her mother, delicious breakfast sandwiches. On his way back, he decided to check the mail. To his surprise, there was a letter there. It was unmarked, only in the middle of the envelope. One word, Stephen, was written in calligraphic handwriting. He couldn't help himself and tore the envelope open on the spot. It contained a letter from Emily. "Hello, Stephen. I hope you are almost recovered. I'm sorry I didn't come by to check on you. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hold back and shed tears on your t-shirt. I won't beat around the bush. Oh, around. I have to tell you that I'm leaving for my house at 500 hours today. It's an emergency. We need to end our relationship. I really do love you very much. I've never been so attracted to anyone before. I wondered why we hadn't met sooner. I came to the conclusion that it was the age difference, which, by the way, I didn't feel at all. It's just that when you were a young guy, I was on the potty. The day before, your mom called me and asked me to meet you. I said yes. If I'd known how this would turn out, I never would have agreed to it in my life. I've been dragged through the mud. I don't think I'll be able to feel normal for months. Camille tells me you already have a fiancé. I'll be honest, I hate to hear it from a stranger. She said I wasn't worthy of you. Well, so be it. Your mom thinks I was signed for self-interest. When I started a relationship with you, it was like I had my eye on your apartment. Honey, I'm gonna have to lay it all on the line. I didn't say anything about Camille last night because she was impossible to interrupt. I have a full family: Mom, Dad, me, and my sister. Mom works as a director of the best high school in the region. My sister studies at the same lyceum. My daddy is a regular governor. I think if your mom knew that, I'd be the best match she's got for you. It's my dad's status that made him hard on me. Everyone there knows me by sight. Since our family photos are in the papers, so I decided to move to your town to be more free. But even there was a man who broke my wings. So I'd rather go back home. It hurts to say goodbye to you, but I don't see any other way out. I hope you can get away from your mother and make a life for yourself. Choose your own wife, job, and home. I wish you all the best. I hope you'll remember me with a kind word. I only ask one thing. Don't look for me. Don't try. I don't want us to have anything to do with each other. I'm not ready to build a family with a man and his mother. They shouldn't be on the same level. I still love you. Your fox on Emily. Stephen was devastated. While he was reading the letter, he didn't notice the button fall out of his hands and onto the coffee tile in the entryway. He didn't bother picking it up, clutching the letter in his hands, headed for his apartment. His mom was still asleep. He needed to think it over. The guy was very hurt. He did not expect such a turn of fate. He could not think that he and Emily would ever part. Only death could separate them. But things turned out very differently. Of course, he looked for someone to blame. In his opinion, it was both Emily and Camille. Mother had insolently meddled in their relationship, and Emily had betrayed him. Yes, she had betrayed him, because she could have told him who she was in the first place. Even though Stephen didn't care, it was important to his mother. If she had immediately found out who her father was, she would not have opposed their relationship at all. It wasn't until he was 30 that a guy got his heart broken for the first time. He realized it wasn't the only time. In his lifetime, it would be. But to minimize the risk, he'd have to make up his mind. Getting away from Camille wasn't easy. I have to move out right now. Full of determination, Stephen got up from the couch, went to the storage room where the suitcases were kept. He packed only the most necessary things and left his parents' house for nowhere. He decided that he would check into the first apartment he could find today. And if it didn't work out, he would temporarily move in with his father, who was on a business trip. Camille woke up half an hour later. After Stephen had left, There was a pleasant aroma of fried eggs in the apartment, the unfinished breakfast that the young man was preparing. Stephen tried to shout to her son, the woman. No one answered. She assumed the young man had gone to get bread and went into the kitchen to make coffee on the bar. Lying crumpled was a piece of paper. As she got closer, she realized it was a letter. Yes, reading other people's letters was not allowed, but Camille did not hold back. At first, there was a wide smile on her face. She was satisfied that she was able to achieve what she wanted. But near the end of the letter, her emotions changed. It was shock mixed with sadness. When she reached the end, Camille realized how much she had miscalculated. Emily was a willful girl, and she would never forgive a woman, no matter how much she begged, even if she got down on her knees. It wasn't until later that she realized she'd lost something important. She had lost her son. It was clear that he had left home. The woman rushed to the phone to dial him, but the caller was out of range. Tears flowed from her eyes. Camille had always been afraid that Stephen would move out on her. She had expected to live with him forever, even when he got married. However, things had turned out very differently. She was left alone and with nothing, like an old woman at a broken trough.